Chapter 740. What's going on with that square space? It seems to have trapped the two heavenly net immortal emperors. How is that possible? That's two 9 stars immortal emperors. Why do I feel like the two heavenly net immortal emperors have lost control of their bodies? They don't seem to be able to resist at all. This is the all-heaven shop master's method. It's as strange and unpredictable as it was 1,000,000 years ago. Does that mean the all-heaven shop master won this battle? Heavens, that's crazy. The all-heaven shop master suppressed the two 9 stars immortal emperors of the heavenly net immortal emperors by himself. Moreover, the battle was extremely simple and didn't seem fancy at all. Countless experts came back to their senses and subconsciously gulped. They couldn't help but let out a long sigh. How did he do it? That space made my heart palpitate. Xian Yuan, Gue Yuan, Hung Su, and the other 9 stars immortal emperors on the immortal emperor ranking looked at each other before they turned to look at the two 9 stars immortal emperors of the heavenly net immortal emperor ranking. Their faces were filled with disbelief. In their opinion, the 9 stars immortal emperors were already at the end of the cultivation path. Battles between existences of this level should be eternal. Perhaps there would be victories and defeats, but there shouldn't be any so-called easy victories, let alone casualties. However, the scene that they had just witnessed had shattered their understanding of the world for hundreds of millions of years. They didn't dare to imagine that the two 9 stars immortal emperors would be suppressed in an instant. They didn't even have the ability to fight back. Unable to suppress their curiosity, Xian Yuan, Gue Yuan, Hung Su, and the other 9 stars immortal emperors exchanged glances. After communicating with their eyes, they appeared beside Yuan Di at the same time. When they entered the world battlefield and sensed the huge space around Chu Bei's body, their expressions froze just like Yuan Di's. The liquid aura flowing in the spacious space was all golden Genesis heaven power. To be more precise, the aura was far superior to the golden Genesis heaven power they had created. Impossible. If it's calculated in droplets, how much would it be? Xian Yuan, Gue Yuan, and the other 9 stars immortal emperors were all numb. After reaching the 9 stars stage, their Genesis heaven power had undergone a qualitative change and reached 200 drops. Who would have thought that the domain Chu Bei had created would be filled with Genesis heaven power, a power that was even stronger than golden Genesis heaven power? No wonder the two from the Tian Luo clan lost their combat power instantly. If we were in such a space, we would definitely have the same ending. In an instant, Xian Yuan, Gue Yuan, and the other immortal emperors came to a realization. The way they looked at Chu Bei was like how ordinary people would look at a monster. A Sorigen sky space. You are not in the realm of 9 stars. You've broken through. The auras of the two celestial emperors from the Tian Luo clan were chaotic. They ignored their injuries and stared at Chu Bei with fear and unease in their eyes. In addition, there was also a hint of regret. Within the Genesis heaven space, Chu Bei glanced at the two celestial emperors from the Tian Luo clan but did not respond. He looked at the other celestial emperors from the Tian Luo clan below and reached out with his right hand, instantly capturing all of them. In the next moment, Chu Bei's eyes narrowed. The vast Genesis heaven space suddenly shrank to the limit until it turned into a palm-sized square crystal and disappeared into his palm. During this process, one could clearly hear the miserable cries of the celestial emperors from the Tian Luo clan. Not long after, the world battlefield collapsed. Chu Bei stepped forward and appeared above the all-heavens shop. Disciple greets master. Xiao Yin, Yi Fan, Sun Wukong, Shihao, Chen Nan, Tang San, and the others immediately stepped forward and knelt in the air. Their voices were emotional, and their eyes were red. You all have done well. It's master who has been a little incompetent. Looking at the group of personal disciples kneeling before him, Chu Bei's mind was filled with thousands of thoughts. Scenes of when he had taken them in as disciples appeared in his mind. The world had changed, and time had passed. Even Linli, Luo Feng, and Jun Moxie had all stepped into the celestial emperor realm. Master, we always believed that you were still alive. Just as we thought, you have returned. Although Xiao Yin, Yi Fan, and the others had already become celestial emperors, Before the all-heavens shop, they did not have their usual celestial emperor's might. Instead, they were more like children. Chu Bei smiled with gratification. Then, he looked at the two men and a woman in green clothes not far away. Disciple Bu Xian greets Master. Disciple Long Lin greets Master. Disciple Bing Tong Tong greets Master. Sensing Chu Bei's gaze, the three figures immediately trembled and hurriedly spoke. Today, in front of all the great beings of the all-heavens domain, I will officially announce that the three of you will be my personal disciples. Chu Bei's voice was calm, but it clearly lingered in the ears of all the great beings. As for my inheritance, each of you will have one. With that, Chu Bei waved his right hand, and 3 whirled fruits and 3 golden bowls flew to Bu Xian, Long Lin, and Bing Tong Tong. Bu Xian, I will give you the Earth God pill. Long Lin, I will give you the Wood God pill. Tong Tong, I will give you the Flower God pill. The 3 smiling voices floated in every corner of the all-heavens domain. Chu Bei's voice echoed in their ears. Staring at the whirled pills floating in front of them, Bu Xian, Long Lin, and Bing Tong Tong were stunned at first. When they regained their senses, they looked at each other and trembled slightly. Thank you, Master. Bu Xian, Long Lin, and Bing Tong Tong kowtowed heavily. 3 trembling voices sounded at the same time. Ever since they were accepted as disciples by Chu Bei, they existed as nominal disciples. Although they were all disciples, in their hearts, they still could not truly regard themselves as Chu Bei's disciples. This was because, in their opinion, Chu Bei's disciples had their own unique inheritance. Among Chu Bei's disciples, their senior brothers, any one of them had already entered the immortal emperor realm. Only the 3 of them had not even entered the immortal king realm. They even felt that they had reached a bottleneck, and the immortal king realm was their final destination. It was impossible to enter the quasi-immortal emperor realm, let alone the immortal emperor realm. This was also the reason why they did not kowtow with Xiaoyin, Yifan, and the others after Chu Bei's victory. This was because in their hearts, although they were also Chu Bei's disciples, they were far from being mentioned in the same breath as Xiaoyin, Yifan, and the others. However, what they did not expect was that just now, in front of all the great beings in the all-heavens domain, their master had personally announced that he would accept them as his personal disciples and would give them the inheritance pill. Chapter 741. Thank you, Master. Bu Xian, Long Lin, and Bing Tong Tong were extremely excited. After bowing deeply to Chu Bei again, they received the golden bowl in front of them and dripped a drop of blood into it. Although Chu Bei did not explain, they had heard about the inheritance ceremony from Xiaoyin, Yifan, and the others and knew what to do. After dripping a drop of blood into the golden bowl, the 3 of them swallowed the Emperor Dao Divine pills in front of them at the same time. The moment the Emperor Dao Divine pills entered their bodies, Bu Xian, Long Lin, and Bing Tong Tong's auras suddenly rose. The bottleneck that had been dormant for a long time was broken, and they entered the quasi-immortal emperor realm. Is this the inheritance ceremony of the all-heavens shop master? Seeing it with my own eyes is better than hearing about it 100 times. It's so magical. The eyes of the cultivators who witnessed this scene were filled with astonishment. Chu Bei nodded in satisfaction when he sensed the changes in Bu Xian and the others' auras. These 3 Emperor Dao Supreme pills were given to him by the system after he communicated with it. As his strength increased, Chu Bei gradually gained the right to negotiate with the system. Owner of the all-heavens shop, are those guys from the Tianluo clan dead? At this moment, Immortal Emperor Xianyuan, Immortal Emperor Guiyuan, and Immortal Emperor Hong Su recovered from their shock and instantly appeared in front of Chu Bei to ask. Chu Bei glanced at the 3 of them indifferently. His gaze swept past them without any response. The 3 of them were the other 9 stars Immortal Emperors on the Immortal Emperor ranking board. However, when the all-heavens shop was in danger, the 3 of them had only been spectators and had no intention of helping. Noticing Chu Bei's indifference, Immortal Emperor Xianyuan and the others obviously realized something and did not ask any further. What's the realm above the 9 stars? Immortal Emperor Yuanyuan also came to Chu Bei's side with a puzzled look on his face. As soon as Immortal Emperor Yuanyuan finished speaking, The noisy all-heavens shop in the Emperor District instantly fell silent. Immortal Emperor Xianyuan, Immortal Emperor Guiyuan, and Immortal Emperor Hong Su were not the only 9 stars Immortal Emperors. All the other Immortal Emperors and experts below the Immortal Emperor level focused their attention on Chu Bei. They all held their breaths as they waited for him to continue speaking. Even the primordial dragon Phoenix, who had inherited memories, widened his eyes. There was no record of what was above the 9 stars realm in his memory. Of the 9 stars, in the minds of all cultivators, the 9th star realm was already the peak of the path of cultivation, and they'd never imagined that there was actually an even higher realm above it. Chu Bei looked at Origin Emperor and pondered for a moment before saying, "To be precise, the Immortal Emperor realm isn't the limit as you all think. Of the immortal realm, the immortal of the immortal of the immortal of the immortal of the immortal. After the first Immortal Emperor realm, there is the second Immortal Emperor realm, and above that is the third Immortal Emperor realm. What is the space that you used to suppress the Tianluo clan?" Immortal Emperor asked. "The Genesis Heaven power you used is a power that can be controlled by the first Immortal Emperor realm and the fourth Immortal Emperor realm. Although the 9 stars realm has been upgraded, it is still in the form of a droplet. Once you reach the second Immortal Emperor realm, you can control the Genesis Heaven space. In the Genesis Heaven space, all Genesis Heaven power will submit. When you break through, you will know when you come into contact with this power." What about the third Immortal Emperor realm? Immortal Emperor Yuanyuan couldn't help but be curious. "The Genesis Heaven world," Chu Bei replied again. Just as Immortal Emperor Yuanyuan was about to ask more, Chu Bei waved his hand, indicating for him to stop asking. It wasn't that Chu Bei was stingy, but that was all he knew. "Thank you for telling me, Senior Chu." Immortal Emperor Yuanyuan nodded slightly. In fact, he still had many questions. For example, where were the second Immortal Emperor realm Immortal Emperors? What was the use of the Origin tool list? Where were the extraordinary forces hidden? And a series of other questions. However, seeing that Chu Bei had no intention of saying more, Immortal Emperor Yuanyuan could only stop asking. "The second Immortal Emperor realm, the Genesis Heaven space? I've really gained something today." Upon hearing Chu Bei's words, Immortal Emperor Xianyuan, Immortal Emperor Guiyuan, and the other Immortal Emperors muttered to themselves, "The show is over. Let's disperse and return peace to the All-Heavens shop." Chu Bei's gaze swept across the surroundings. His Emperor's aura filled every corner of Emperor District, and his voice was filled with supreme majesty. Immortal Emperor Yuanyuan, Immortal Emperor Xianyuan, and the other supreme experts looked at each other, and their figures faded until they completely disappeared. Almost at the same time, the tens of thousands of powerful divine consciousness shrouding the All-Heavens shop withdrew. In a short while, there were no more experts in the huge All-Heavens shop in Emperor District. Although the experts in the outside world had retreated, the All-Heavens shop and the entire Emperor District were still immersed in a wild atmosphere of joy and celebration. While celebrating the victory of this battle, they were also celebrating Chu Bei's return. "Master, the source of the Sky Market explosion, which is the so-called Origin weapon catalog, is it? How could it alarm those extraordinary forces?" Apart from the Tianluo clan, other extraordinary forces also sent people to confirm your news, but they weren't as persistent as the former. Yifan looked respectfully at Chu Bei, his face filled with confusion. "When the time is right, I'll tell you." Chu Bei's voice was calm. "Master, are you going to leave again this time?" Xiaoyan looked at Chu Bei and asked. "Activating the All-Heaven City for the host. The host is going to undergo one last training." Just as Chu Bei was about to tell Xiaoyan and the other disciples that he would not leave, the system's voice rang in his mind. Chu Bei was slightly taken aback. He did not expect that he would enter the All-Heaven City again after entering the Immortal Emperor realm. After a long while, the space-time wheel appeared, and Chu Bei stepped into it. However, what surprised Chu Bei was that the All-Heaven City was no longer chaotic this time. When he stepped into the All-Heaven City, his Immortal Emperor power quickly dissipated. 3 months later, All-Heaven City, Purple Cloud Sect. "Uncle Master, I've washed your clothes for you." On the mountainside, A young girl in a purple dress ran elegantly into a unique courtyard. As she ran, the girl's curved eyebrows and long eyelashes trembled slightly. Her fair and flawless skin had a faint pink hue, and her thin lips were as delicate as rose petals. Her beautiful face exuded a gentle and elegant temperament. Schwer, I haven't seen you for a day, and you've become even more beautiful. In the courtyard, there was a handsome young man with a smile on his face. Uncle Master, you're teasing me again. The girl in the purple dress glared at the young man. The handsome young man took the clothes from the girl, and the smile on his face suddenly disappeared. His expression became serious. Schwer, do you like the Uncle Master from 3 months ago? Or do you like the current Uncle Master? Huh. The girl seemed to be stunned by the sudden question. After pondering for a long while, the girl muttered innocently, the previous Uncle Master didn't talk much and only knew how to cultivate every day. He ignored Schwer when I talked to you. The current Uncle Master is very close. He sleeps, eats, and daydreams every day. In Master's words, he's idling around. Well, if I really have to say, I certainly like the current Uncle Master. Hearing the girl's answer, the young man twitched the corner of his mouth. Idling around. Although this word was appropriate, he did not want to be like that. Chapter 742. That's right. The young man was Chubei. To be exact, the soul was Chubei. That wasn't quite right either, because the original owner of this body was also called Chubei. He didn't expect that this last trial would not only dissipate his cultivation, but also allow his soul to transmigrate into the body of a dead person. He had been training for 3 whole months. To be more precise, he had no direction and had been idling for 3 months. The father of the dead person he had replaced was the sect master of the Purple Cloud sect. 5 months ago, he was suddenly announced to have become obsessed with cultivation and died. The entire sect was immersed in grief, except for the original owner of this body. This was because he knew that his father didn't die because he became obsessed, but was killed by the first elder, the third elder, the sixth elder, and the seventh elder. What Chubei admired was the shrewdness of the original owner of this body. It was not an ordinary forbearance. On the surface, when facing the first elder and the other enemies who killed his father, he was respectful and courteous as usual. But in secret, he turned this killing intent into motivation and cultivated crazily day and night. The sad thing was, before he could grow, his enemy had taken the initiative to make a move. The black bone poison sealed all his meridians and acupoints in one night, turning him into a complete cripple. Later, the pitiful original owner was sent to this unique courtyard. As for the obedient girl in the purple dress in front of him, her name was Mu Schwer, 17 years old. Although she was only 3 years younger than the original owner of this body, her seniority was lower. After all, the original owner's senior brother was her master. The Xinhuang continent was millions of miles long and wide, so big that the original owner of this body didn't even have the definition of area. He only knew that the Purple Cloud sect was located in a corner of the western continent. The humans here used their meridians and acupoints to absorb true martial qi to cultivate, but the original owner of this body was ravaged by the black bone poison. His meridians and acupoints were blocked, and his true martial qi dissipated. He couldn't start again even if he wanted to. The host comprehended the source heaven space with the body of a mortal. It's finally here. Hearing the long-awaited system's voice, Chubei's body trembled. The source heaven space was a supreme technique that only martial emperors could master. He had once used the system to experience it. Just as Chubei was deep in thought, the scenery around him changed, and he arrived in a world with surging rivers. To be more precise, these rivers were formed from Genesis heaven energy, and Emperor Dao aura was everywhere. Chubei allowed his body to float above the river, feeling the flow of Genesis heaven power. Several days later, in a house with an exquisite courtyard, a crack appeared in the void. Chubei walked out of the mysterious domain with a dark green medicine bag in his hand. It was something he had created by absorbing a small amount of Genesis heaven power. Crack. At this moment, a clear sound rang out, and a young girl in a purple dress pushed open the door and walked into the room. Martial uncle, You didn't die." Seeing Chu Bei, the purple-dressed girl was startled at first, but when she reacted, she immediately put down the clothes in her hand and hugged Chu Bei's arm. Her beautiful face was filled with joy and happiness. "What are you talking about? Your martial uncle is someone who wants immortality." Looking at the girl in front of him whom he had spent 3 months with, Chu Bei smiled knowingly and couldn't help but reach out and give her a knock on the head. "Martial uncle, where have you been these 7 days? They all said you fell off a cliff and didn't even have a corpse left." Mu Shui rubbed her little head and cast a displeased glance at Chu Bei. "These days, martial uncle went out to gather herbs." Chu Bei rolled his eyes, putting his hands on Mu Shui's shoulders, and said with a serious face, "With this, martial uncle can cultivate again." Speaking of this, Chu Bei pointed to the medicine bag in his palm, and then pointed outside the room. "Go boil some water for martial uncle. He'll take a medicinal bath later." Oh, Mu Shui didn't ask any more questions and obediently trotted out. In the room, Chu Bei sat cross-legged in a large wooden tub filled with hot water, his handsome face faintly discernible in the steam. "Shui, you can pour the medicine bag into the tub now." Chu Bei's voice sounded, and Mu Shui hurriedly carried the medicine bag to the tub. Seeing Chu Bei's half-exposed body at such a close distance, Mu Shui's cheeks flushed even redder. She shyly lowered her eyes, and her slender white fingers picked up the herbs and threw them into the tub. "Martial uncle, can't you put in the herbs yourself?" Mu Shui's cheeks were red, and she was very shy. When the herbs entered the tub, the water in the tub was instantly dyed emerald green. At this moment, Chu Bei's entire body was flushed red from the hot water. At this moment, Chu Bei felt all the pores on his body open, and wisps of emerald green liquid immediately entered his body through his pores like a living creature. The meridians and acupoints that were originally blocked were being constantly attacked by a gentle force, and the cycle repeated itself. As time passed, the color of the hot water in the tub gradually faded. This was because the source heaven force had begun to seep into Chu Bei's cells, meridians, and acupoints bit by bit. Gradually, Chu Bei could clearly feel his muscles slowly expanding and his loose bones constantly hardening. Crackling sounds began to come from Chu Bei's limbs and bones. He could clearly feel that most of his blocked meridians and acupoints had been cleared. After about half an hour, the remaining source heaven force in the water was absorbed into his body, and the water that was previously dyed emerald green also became clear again. Chu Bei slowly opened his eyes and turned to look at Mu Shui, who was looking down, blushing, and extremely shy. He smiled and said, "Shui, thank you." And, seeing that Chu Bei had finished his medicinal bath, Mu Shui responded softly and quickly trotted out of Chu Bei's room. "That shy little expression, it's amazing." Looking at Mu Shui's back, Chu Bei couldn't help but reveal a smile. Now, his life seemed to have been reborn. After comfortably stretching his waist, Chu Bei closed his eyes and rested. In this small plane, the cultivation system above ordinary people was the Qi tempering realm, level 1 to level 9, which was a body refining realm. Above that was the mortal evolution realm, level 1 to level 9, which was the initial stage of true martial Qi release. Above that was the martial contact realm, which was further divided into 3 realms. Martial spirits, level 1 to 9 stars, could condense spirit armor. Martial generals, level 1 to 9 stars, could condense cyclones in their bodies and could temporarily stay in the air. Martial kings, level 1 to 9 stars, were extremely skilled in using true martial Qi and could fly. The previous sect master of the Purple Cloud sect, who was also the father of the original Chu Bei, was a 9 stars martial king, the strongest person in the Purple Cloud sect. After changing his clothes, Chu Bei walked out of his room and recalled the source heaven force he felt in the mysterious space. But at this moment, a commotion suddenly came from outside the courtyard, and Mu Shui's pitiful cries. Chu Bei's expression changed, and he quickly walked out of the courtyard. When he saw Mu Shui's petite body being pulled by 3 16 or 17-year-old boys, his eyes instantly spat fire. Chapter 743. Do you want to die? In a flash, Chu Bei came to Mu Shui's side and pulled her behind him. He stared coldly at the three youths in front of him. Martial uncle, they are Li Ao's men. They insisted on taking me to Li Ao's place. I didn't want to, so they forced me. Seeing Chu Bei's arrival, Mu Shuer held back her sobs and hugged Chu Bei tightly. Her expression was like a frightened kitten. Li Ao? That little guy has become so arrogant. Chu Bei's face was gloomy and his words were cold. Since the death of the original Chu Bei's father, the temporary helmsman of the Purple Cloud sect was Great Elder Li Xian. And this Li Ao was Li Xian's precious son. Young martial uncle, aren't you dead? The three youths looked at Chu Bei in astonishment. They had received news that their young martial uncle had fallen off the cliff and nothing was left of him. What? Still not getting lost? Chu Bei snorted coldly. Hearing this, the three youths looked at each other. After a moment of hesitation, they seemed to have come to a decision. Young martial uncle, senior brother Li fell in love with junior sister Shuer at first sight. He invited her several times, but junior sister Shuer refused. Today, senior brother Li told us to bring junior sister Shuer to him no matter what. One of the youths stepped forward. It won't be long before Great Elder becomes the new sect leader. Senior brother Li will also become the young sect leader. Not to mention, senior brother Li is talented and intelligent. It is junior sister Shuer's fortune to be chosen by senior brother Li. Chu Bei stared at the three youths and sneered. Do you think Great Elder can become the sect leader? Li Ao can become the young sect leader? Young martial uncle, the position of young sect leader should be yours. But now that your cultivation is gone, this position is no longer suitable for you. One of the youths scratched his head and said no more. He stretched out his hand to grab Mu Shuer. Chu Bei smiled and reached out a hand to grab the youth's outstretched hand. No matter how hard the youth tried, he couldn't move an inch. Ouch, ouch, the young man cried out. His face was red, but no matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't break free. Let go of senior brother Wang. Without hesitation, the two youths clenched their fists and punched towards Chu Bei. Chu Bei's expression was cold, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Then, he clenched his fist, and before the youth could cry out, a fist landed on his chest. The leader of the group let out a blood-curdling scream and fell to the ground on his butt. Blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. When the other two youths saw that their companion was bleeding, a trace of fear appeared on their faces. However, how could they withdraw their fists so easily? Looking at the other two people coming towards him, Chu Bei's fists were wrapped in a layer of true martial qi and punched out. Crack! With a crisp sound, the two youths' fingers were fractured. If you don't scram, there will be 3 corpses lying on the ground. Chu Bei disdainfully glanced at the 3 lackeys and snorted coldly. Your cultivation. The 3 injured youths stared at Chu Bei. Just as they were about to ask something, they saw Chu Bei slowly walking towards them with a terrifying smile on his face. Without a second thought, they turned around and fled. Seeing the 3 fleeing figures, Chu Bei narrowed his eyes. After being cleansed by the Genesis Heaven Force, he had managed to regain some strength. Uncle Master, didn't you lose your cultivation? How did you beat them up? Mu Shuer's eyes widened as she stared at Chu Bei in disbelief. The 3 people who were beaten up just now were all at the 7th layer of qi tempering. Shuer, under the medicinal bath just now, I've already recovered. Chu Bei smiled as he looked at Mu Shuer. You also contributed to this. Mu Shuer's face turned red. Uncle Master, are those medicinal herbs really that useful? Can it let Shuer feel the existence of true martial qi? Chu Bei smiled in embarrassment. This medicinal herb is only effective for Uncle Master. Oh. Mu Shuer pouted and raised her fist in anger. Shuer also wants to cultivate. Only when I'm strong will they not dare to harass me. Chu Bei did not reply. The first condition for people in the Xinhuang continent to embark on the path of martial cultivation was to be able to sense the true martial qi between heaven and earth. The probability was that 1 in 10 people would be able to sense it. Those with poor talent would be able to sense it at the age of 14. Those with average talent would be able to sense it at the age of 10. Those with good talent would be able to sense it at the age of 6. There were even some monsters who could sense it at the age of 2 or 3 when they just learned how to walk. Chu Bei was one of those with good talent. When he sensed true martial chi at the age of 5.5, his martial cultivation talent was quite terrifying. Before his meridians were destroyed, his cultivation level had already reached the 7th layer of exuvia, which was 4 layers higher than Chu Bei's current cultivation level. Thinking about Chu Bei's previous performance, Mu Shui blinked and probed, "Uncle Master, did you return to the mortal evolution state?" Chu Bei nodded. 3rd layer of exuvia. I knew Uncle Master would definitely become that prodigy that everyone was jealous of. Mu Shui grabbed Chu Bei's arm and shook it happily. However, this happiness only lasted for a few seconds before it was replaced by a worried expression. "Uncle Master, you attacked those 3 guys, and they are Li Ao's people. With Li Ao's temperament, he will definitely come and find trouble with you." Mu Shui looked at Chu Bei worriedly. Although Little Uncle Master was 1 generation higher than them, when the old sect leader was still here, Li Ao would still be respectful to Little Uncle Master on the surface. But now, the other party would definitely not put Little Uncle Master in his eyes. "Shui, you're still worried about Uncle Master? Not to mention Li Ao. Even if his father came, Uncle Master wouldn't be afraid." Chu Bei stroked Mu Shui's hair and said gently, "If only Master was in the sect." Mu Shui bit her lips. In her opinion, Chu Bei's words were undoubtedly to not let her worry. "Your master might be on his way back." Chu Bei smiled faintly. Mu Shui's master was his senior brother, the 2nd elder of Purple Cloud sect. Since he left 3 months ago, there had been no news of him. "Dad, when are you going to become the sect leader?" In a large hall, a 16 or 17-year-old youth, wearing a luxurious robe, handed a cup of tea to a middle-aged man sitting on the main seat. "The time isn't right yet." Li Xian shook his head. "I know you like Mu Shui, but the time isn't right yet. You can't be too anxious. You need to wait. I've already asked Wang Hu to invite her over." Li Ao licked his lips, his eyes gleaming. "Don't mess around." Li Xian frowned slightly. Chapter 744. Ta-ta-da. Senior brother, junior sister Shui. She? Great elder, 3rd elder. You're here too. Wang Hu and the other 2 ran in with hurried footsteps. When they saw that Li Xian was also there, they hurriedly bowed, their faces filled with respect. "If you have something to say, say it," Li Xian said coldly without waiting for Li Ao to speak. Wang Hu hesitated for a moment and said truthfully, "Senior brother, we went to invite junior sister Shui as you instructed. But just as junior sister Shui agreed to come, junior martial uncle stopped her and even hit us." "Which little martial uncle?" Li Xian was stunned at first, then asked in surprise, "You mean Chu Bei?" Seeing Wang Hu nod, Li Xian frowned. "Didn't he fall off the cliff? And all of you are at Qi Tempering Stage 5. He's just a cripple." "Senior brother, little martial uncle is not a cripple. His strength is far beyond ours. In my opinion, he should be at Qi Tempering Stage 8. Wang Hu said hurriedly. The 2 beside him also agreed. "Impossible." Li Xian was shocked and said in a deep voice, "His meridians are blocked and he can't absorb true martial qi. He should be a cripple." "Big brother, do you think this kid got some kind of opportunity?" 3rd elder He Tian asked. "No, I can't be at ease as long as this kid is alive. What's more, he has a cultivation base." Li Xian's face darkened. "Father, I have a way to get rid of him." Li Ao gave Wang Hu and the other 2 a look and asked them to leave. The corner of his mouth raised into a sinister smile. There are still 3 days until the opening of the Purple Cloud Fantasy Realm. Now that Chu Bei has cultivated again, he will definitely sign up to participate. When the time comes, I can make a move on him in the Purple Cloud Mirage without anyone knowing. 3rd brother, what do you think of Ao's idea? Li Xian looked at He Tian. The reason why he couldn't make a move on Chu Bei in the sect was that the target was too eye-catching. Chu Bei's death would easily arouse suspicion. Secondly, he wasn't sure if the previous sect leader who was in seclusion to break through to the Saint Realm was really dead. That works. Wang Hu nodded in agreement. If Chu Bei dies inside, no one will be too suspicious. After all, death was a common occurrence in the Purple Cloud Illusory Realm. This is a good opportunity. Since your third elder has agreed, then you'd better handle this matter well. Li Xian sipped his tea, his eyes carrying a trace of malice. I promise that I won't let you down, Li Xian replied solemnly. When Chu Bei came out of the courtyard, the sky had already darkened. Little martial uncle, look at the top of the mountain. The purple cloud illusory realm has appeared. Mu Shui suddenly screamed. Chu Bei looked up and saw a huge vortex above the mountain peak. From afar, it looked like a black hole. As time passed, the black vortex grew bigger and bigger until it formed a floating black area. Every sect or faction in the dark wilderness continent could not escape from the illusions. To be precise, it was because of the existence of the illusory realm that the faction or sect that controlled the illusory realm was born. There were a total of 5 colors in the illusory realm. Different colors of the illusory realm had different levels of opportunity and danger. The illusory realm controlled by the Purple Cloud sect was the lowest level of the 5, the Black Illusory Realm. The illusory realm would change, and it would appear once every year. Although the illusory realm differed from year to year, there was one thing in common: the illusion jade. Each illusion jade was the energy source that supported the illusory realm. It contained a huge amount of pure true martial qi that could be absorbed by martial artists for their own use. Under normal circumstances, the illusory realm could last for 7 days. However, if someone obtained the illusion jade, the illusory realm would disintegrate prematurely. Other than the illusion jade, there were other opportunities in the illusory realm, such as true martial stones that also contained true martial qi and spirit herbs with various effects. Of course, opportunities were often accompanied by danger. Although different illusory realms had different levels of danger, even the lowest level of the Black Illusory Realm might have 1 or 2 terrifying existences within. Are you going to the illusory realm this time? Of course. Perhaps I'll encounter an opportunity and break through to the mortal evolution state. Last time, half of the people died. Fortune comes from danger. Listening to the conversations of the disciples coming and going on the bluestone path, the corners of Chu Bei's mouth raised into a faint smile. Little martial uncle, will you go to the illusory realm? Mu Shui bit her teeth and stared at Chu Bei with her big watery eyes. The illusory realm is very dangerous. Every year, many senior brothers and sisters won't be able to come out. Don't worry, little martial uncle is the chosen one. Chu Bei smiled knowingly. Since the system wanted him to experience it, he naturally couldn't miss out on every opportunity. 3 days passed in a flash. Disciples who want to enter the Purple Cloud Illusory Realm gather at the square immediately. Suddenly, a powerful voice resounded in every corner of the Purple Cloud sect. Oh shit, is she really one of the leading teachers? She looks about the same age as me. Indeed, I've been in the sect for 2 years, but I haven't seen this teacher yet. Don't guess blindly if you don't know. Although Teacher Xia is about the same age as us, she's a real master of the physical martial state, a 3-star martial spirit. The reason why you haven't seen her in the sect is because she went out to experience 2 years ago. It's also because of the death of the old sect leader that she came back. At this moment, the square was already crowded with people, and the air was filled with all kinds of noises and discussions. In the crowd, Chu Bei looked at the girl in purple who was being discussed by the disciples, and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. The girl in purple was called Xia Hanyan. She was the pro-disciple of the original Chu Bei's father. And the original Chu Bei and his father were from the same master, which was the previous sect leader. In terms of seniority, this girl who was 1 or 2 years older than him had to call him martial uncle. Ever since Chu Bei came to this plane, the thing that gave him the most headaches was seniority. To be honest, most of the people here had to call him martial uncle. Keep quiet. Xia Hanyan didn't use a loudspeaker, but her cold voice filled the whole square. Although I'm only a few years older than you, I hope you can give me the respect I deserve. You're all gathered here, presumably to enter the illusion. Due to the restrictions of the illusion, only 3 martial spirits are allowed to enter the Purple Cloud illusion every year. I'm very lucky to be one of them. Speaking up to this point, Xia Hanyan's gaze swept across some of the people in the square and continued, different from the restriction of the number of martial spirits. Any disciple of the mortal evolution state and the chi refinement state can enter the illusion. Perhaps you're looking forward to it now, fantasizing that you can get an opportunity from the illusion, fantasizing that you can use it to achieve meteoric success. I have to say, there are indeed many opportunities in the illusion, but opportunities are often accompanied by danger. I think most of you haven't entered the illusion before or have only entered it once. If you die inside, you're dead. No one will even bring your corpse back to the sect. Chapter 745. The illusory realm is very dangerous, and the opening of the illusory realm every year is different from the previous year. Even I don't know what will be in the illusory realm this time. Maybe I won't be able to come back. Following Xia Hanyan's speech, the jovial expressions of the disciples in the square disappeared and were replaced by a solemn expression. Although they already knew what Xia Hanyan had said, hearing it from the other party's mouth, they still felt a little flustered. Actually, sometimes when you calm down and think about it, it's not bad to follow the rules and practice in the sect. Although the practice is slower, at least you don't have to worry about losing your life. Now there's still some time, you can think about it carefully. After a quarter of an hour, if you decide to enter the illusory realm, follow me to the top of the mountain. In the illusory realm, besides facing all kinds of strange creatures, you also have to be on guard against other people in the sect. Even if you have the best relationship with them, you have to be vigilant against each other. After all, in front of benefits, many people will lose their nature. Time passed by slowly. Perhaps Xia Hanyan's words had an effect. Some people chose to withdraw, but most of them still decided to enter the illusory realm. In the illusory realm, everyone will be sent to a random place. Everyone will try to stay together. If you meet me or other mentors, it's best to follow closely behind. At this point, Xia Hanyan looked at the black vortex at the top of the mountain and said in a low voice, "Those who have made their decision, get ready to follow me into the illusory realm." After everything was ready, Chu Bei squeezed into the crowd and followed the three mentors to the top of the mountain. Interesting. At the top of the mountain, Chu Bei looked at the black vortex calmly. There was a huge suction force in it. Enter the illusory realm. When Xia Hanyan gave the order, the disciples rose one after another and were pulled in by the suction force in the vortex. Chu Bei was following behind a youth in white, but the moment he entered the vortex, the youth in white suddenly disappeared from his sight. In an instant, his feet that were in the air in the vortex had a foothold, and at this moment, everything in his sight started to change. Chu Bei walked on the black soil and looked around, sizing up this strange little world. Beneath his feet was a wide, pitch-black path. The end of the path could not be seen, and he did not know where it led to. To his right was a meandering stream, and in the distance were towering mountains. Whoosh! Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out. Sensing the strong wind coming from behind him, Chu Bei subconsciously exerted force with his right foot and moved sideways to the left. A cold light narrowly brushed past Chu Bei's right hand. Chu Bei steadied himself and looked ahead. When he saw the person who tried to kill him, the corner of his mouth twitched. In front of him, a big white rabbit was glaring at him fiercely, with a knife in its mouth. The rabbit's figure moved again, rushing towards Chu Bei. This time, Chu Bei did not dodge. His right hand was wrapped in Genesis Heaven power, and his palm turned into a claw as he grabbed the blade. Gotcha! Chu Bei exerted force, and the knife in the rabbit's mouth broke into two with a crisp breaking sound. With its weapon destroyed, the rabbit did not run away. Instead, it became even more ferocious. It squeaked twice at Chu Bei, opened its mouth, and pounced towards his neck. Bang! Chu Bei punched out and felt the impact of the rabbit. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. The rabbit's strength was not weaker than an 8th stage chi tempering cultivator. Of course, this kind of strength was far from being his match. Amidst a howl, the rabbit's figure smashed into the stream like a cannonball. After resting for a while, Chu Bei fell into a daze. His cultivation had dissipated, and he could not tell north from south. Where should he go now? The most important thing in an illusion was the illusion jade, and the illusion jade would exist in the center of the illusion. But the problem was, how could he determine where the center was? Just as Chu Bei was at a loss, a loud noise suddenly came from the distant sky. Then, the void began to distort, and a circular red light pillar fell from the distortion. Looking at the circular light pillar, some information flashed in Chu Bei's mind. The corners of his mouth curved, and his gaze became firm. With the target's location, everything would be easy. Grand Marshal Uncle? Why are you here? That's right, you're just a cripple, without cultivation. Isn't it the same as sending yourself to your death? Don't just stand there. We're being targeted by a big guy. Run. If you're too slow, you'll lose your life. Just as Chu Bei was about to rush to the central area, a wave of terrified shouts entered his ears. Looking towards the source of the sound, he saw a group of people madly rushing towards his direction. These bastards! Chu Bei frowned. These guys knew there was danger, but they still ran towards him. There was a huge black shadow chasing after them. Looking at it carefully, the black shadow looked like a wild boar in the mountains on Earth. The only difference was that it was twice as big. What an unexpected experience. Chu Bei sighed. In the chase, 2 disciples had already fallen to the ground. Blood flowed from their wounds and dyed the ground red. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Grand Marshal Uncle, run? The disciple running at the front shouted again. Chu Bei hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he clenched his fists. He couldn't bear to watch this group of people who called him Grand Marshal Uncle die. Grand Marshal Uncle, do you really want to die? Sigh. Looking at Chu Bei running over, the group of disciples sighed. Roar. The big wild boar at the front seemed to have sensed Chu Bei's provocation. After a roar, it retreated and increased its speed by a notch. Looking at the wild boar that was getting closer and closer, Chu Bei held his breath and punched out with both fists. Bang! In an instant, the 2 forces collided with each other. The big wild boar's huge body suddenly stopped. Then, its head that was right in front of Chu Bei's fist was deflated. Then, it was sent flying. Along with the sound of a heavy crash, the wild boar that was sent flying by Chu Bei spat out white foam from its mouth. Its body was twitching nonstop. After a short exchange, Chu Bei finally understood why this group of Qi refinement stage kids wanted to run away. It seems like this wild boar's strength had already reached the first celestial layer of exuvia. Not far away, the escaping disciples stopped running. Each of them turned around and stared at Chu Bei. Their eyes were filled with shock. Damn, that big guy is dead. None of us were a match for it. Grand Marshal Uncle killed it alone. Grand Marshal Uncle, wasn't your cultivation crippled? How could you still kill it? Could it be that the genius Grand Marshal Uncle has returned? Grand Marshal Uncle, you were once my only idol. When I first entered the sect, my first dream was to be like you and have my name on the heaven ranking. In the midst of the discussion, the group of disciples looked at Chu Bei with admiration. Chapter 746. How dare you enter the illusion with such low cultivation? You must be tired of living. Chu Bei brushed the dust off his body and was about to leave. Grand Uncle Master, aren't you coming with us? When the disciples saw Chu Bei leaving, they hurriedly got up and ran forward. Go with you? Chu Bei's lips curled into a playful arc. Yes, there's strength in numbers. It's too dangerous for you to be alone. That's right. We can look for the mentors together. We'll be safe once we find them. The disciples chimed in one after another, trying to rope Chu Bei into their team. I don't want to bring burdens like you along. If we're fated, we'll meet in the central area. Chu Bei smiled and sped up towards the direction of the circular light pillar. The night was getting darker. Chu Bei didn't continue on his journey. Instead, he searched for a place to rest. Just as he was passing over a hill, a miserable shriek could be heard, mixed with curses. Following the source of the voice, Chu Bei slowly approached. Liao, you son of a bitch. I followed the wrong person. Wang Hu, you can't blame me for this. If I didn't use you as bait, we would all have to die here. I'd rather die in my current state. Do you want me to fulfill your wish? You'll go to hell. If God can take me in, then let him do it. Chu Bei stood behind a rock. In front of him, a long-haired young man was writhing on the ground in pain. His lower body was festering as if he had just been bitten by some ferocious beast. Beside the long-haired young man stood a tall and skinny young man. At the feet of the tall and skinny young man was a 2-meter-long beast. Coincidentally, the long-haired young man on the ground was beaten up by him 3 days ago. Under Chu Bei's gaze, Liao pulled out the long sword from the beast's body and stabbed it into Wang Hu's neck. How brutal! Just as Chu Bei was about to label Liao as an inhumane person, a strong gust of wind came from behind him. He was very familiar with this feeling. As expected, it was a big white rabbit with a knife in its mouth. Chu Bei subconsciously dodged to the side, and then chopped down with a hand knife. Accompanied by a dull thud, the big white rabbit crashed heavily to the ground, no longer breathing. "Who is it?" Almost at the same time, Liao's cold voice drifted in the air. Amidst the rustling sounds, Liao's figure flashed and appeared behind the mountain rock in the blink of an eye. When he saw Chu Bei's appearance clearly, the corners of his mouth immediately lifted into a sinister and vicious smile. "There's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There's no door to hell, but you want to throw yourself into it." Liao hurriedly wiped the blood off the blade. "Chu Bei, I was just about to look for you, but you delivered yourself to me. It seems that God is really kind to me." "Little Martial nephew, what are you looking for Martial uncle for?" Although Chu Bei had a guess in his heart, he still pretended to be nonchalant on the surface. "You say, isn't it good to be an ordinary person? With Ziyun's sect supporting you, you don't have to worry about food and drink. But you just happen to have some kind of opportunity and can actually cultivate again." Liao's face suddenly became gloomy. "Do you know that your existence is an extremely unstable factor to father?" "Little Martial nephew, hearing what you said, you're not going to kill me in this illusion, are you?" Chu Bei's face did not show the slightest expression of fear, and even laughed mockingly. "Hee, if I kill you here, no one will know. The people outside won't associate your death with us either. After all, in the illusion, death is a normal thing." As Liao spoke, he shook his long sword, and the corners of his mouth revealed a terrifying smile. "Little Martial nephew, don't be anxious." Chu Bei smiled faintly. "I have a question that I'm very curious about." "What is it?" Liao played with his long sword. "Since you're going to be a dead man soon, I'll satisfy your curiosity. The question is..." Chu Bei dragged his words, and suddenly changed his tone. "Where did you get the confidence to think that the person who will die here will be me and not you?" As the cold voice that was mixed with killing intent fell, Chu Bei's figure moved, and a fist went straight for Liao's head. The sudden change caused Liao's expression to change. After quickly taking a step back, he also clenched his fist and punched out. Bang! The two fists collided. Chu Bei's figure stood firm, but Liao was forced back, and his feet left a 2-centimeter mark on the ground. How is this possible?" Liao suppressed the blood in his chest and looked at Chu Bei in horror. "You're clearly only at the 8th level of qi tempering, but your strength. Who told you that my cultivation is at the 8th level of qi tempering?" Chu Bei glanced at Liao in disdain, and then pointed at Wang Hu's body on the ground. "Could it be him? Damn it, you hid your strength from him?" Liao frowned deeply. "Of course, if I used my full strength, he would have been a corpse 3 days ago." Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest, and there was mockery between his brows. "Don't you think so, my little Martial nephew?" After hearing Chu Bei's words, Liao took a deep breath. Through the previous exchange, he was very sure that Chu Bei's cultivation was at the 3rd level of exuvia or even higher. He wasn't someone that he, who had just reached the mortal evolution state, could deal with. Thinking about this, Liao didn't hesitate at all, and quickly turned around and ran away. "Want to run?" Chu Bei sneered, and chased after him at an even faster speed. 3 minutes later, Wang Hu's body was beside Wang Hu. There was an extra corpse next to Wang Hu. This corpse was already beaten beyond recognition, and its entire body was covered with purplish-red bruises. Some parts of its head were even deeply sunken in, and it was very frightening. After casually using a few leaves to cover the two corpses, Chu Bei continued to look for a place to rest for the night. That's where the sound of fighting came from. Quick, come and see. There's a corpse here. This, Liao. He's actually dead. Did you perish together with this beast? I know this other person too. He's called Wang Hu. Looking at his legs, it was clearly bitten by the beast. But why does Liao's death look so weird? It feels like he was punched to death by someone's fist. Sigh. If the first elder knew that his precious son died in such a miserable state, who knows how sad he would be? Poor guy. Why can't this Liao understand? If I were him, I wouldn't come to the illusion realm. I just want to wait for my dad to successfully become the sect leader, and then peacefully be the young sect leader. How beautiful would that be? Not long after Chu Bei left, a group of disciples came to the side of the corpses, and they buried them while sighing. The night was getting darker, and one couldn't even see their fingers if they stretched out their hand. Chu Bei had already arrived at the waist of a mountain peak. He was still climbing up, because there was a cave at a higher point, and there was a faint light of fire in the cave. In the night, although he couldn't do it as if it was daytime, it wasn't to the extent that he couldn't see anything. Chapter 747. It smells so good. Just as he reached the entrance of the cave, the aroma of meat wafted into Chu Bei's nostrils. Following the aroma, Chu Bei continued to go deeper. Just as he turned a corner, Chu Bei was stunned. His expression was as if he had seen something inconceivable. Indeed, he had seen a strange scene. A Xiaohei dog. That's right, a dog. It was skillfully roasting meat. Xiaohei dog sat cross-legged on the ground. Its two front paws skillfully skewered meat and placed it between two stones that were already set up. The area between the stones was burning with a raging flame. When the flame was extinguished, Xiaohei dog would skillfully push a wooden stick inside. Looking at the huge carcass of a wild beast beside it, and looking at the fresh blood flowing out, it seemed to have died not long ago. Soon, the meat skewers turned yellow. Xiaohei dog stretched out its paws to pick up the meat skewers and leisurely gnawed on them. When the meat skewers were finished, it did the same thing again. Skewering meat, roasting it, adding more fire. The cycle repeated itself. Woof woof. Suddenly, a dog barking filled with anger reached Chu Bei's ears. Chu Bei came back to his senses and realized that he had been discovered by Xiaohei dog. It was glaring at him fiercely. Good boy, don't be afraid. I'm just passing by and came to ask for a meal. Chu Bei did not care whether Xiaohei dog could understand him or not. He walked toward the barbecue area as if they were familiar with each other. Woof! Before Chu Bei could take 2 steps, Xiaohei dog barked. It then opened its mouth and took a deep breath. Then, a blazing fireball was spat out. Little guy, is this how you treat your guests? Do you believe that I won't kill you and eat your dog meat? Chu Bei glared at Xiaohei dog and narrowly avoided the fireball. Xiaohei dog seemed to understand Xiang Fei's words. Its expression became even more ferocious. Another fireball was spat out from its mouth. Don't push your luck. Chu Bei glanced at the ground that was scorched black by the fireball. He was only a mortal now. If he was hit by this fireball, it would not be fun. However, Xiaohei was clearly not prepared to let Chu Bei go. The frequency of its fireballs spitting out increased. Due to the increased speed of the fireballs, Chu Bei's footsteps began to become frantic, and he was almost hit in the head by a fireball. Chu Bei hurriedly used his Genesis Heaven power to form a cloak around his body. Chi. Xiaohei's fireball smashed onto Chu Bei's cloak. Although it was powerful, it did not cause any damage to Chu Bei. Chu Bei shot a glance at Xiaohei, the dog. Then, under Xiaohei's gaze, he leisurely sat beside the grill. Little dog, I've spent a lot of money for this meat. He did not have much Genesis Heaven power left. It could be said that the more he used it, the less he had. Fortunately, with the Genesis Heaven cloak, he did not have to worry about being hurt for a short period of time. Woof 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 woof. Upon seeing Chu Bei sit where it previously sat and unable to hurt him, Xiaohei seemed to have gone mad. It circled around Chu Bei and barked nonstop. I never imagined that there would be a day when I would have to fight with a dog for food. Chu Bei mocked himself as he roasted the meat. Perhaps it was because Chu Bei had used up too much energy after running for an entire afternoon, but it did not take long for him to finish off more than half of the beast carcasses. When he was full, Chu Bei seemed to realize something and immediately looked around. Xiaohei was gone. It's good that it's gone. Let me have a good sleep alone. Chu Bei lazily stretched his back and found a rock to lean on. However, just as he closed his eyes, he heard a gust of wind. Crack! A sharp sound rang out. His cloak seemed to have been sliced by a sharp blade. Fortunately, the cloak's defense was strong enough. Otherwise, his body would have been cut open. Chu Bei shivered as a look of vigilance appeared on his face. But the problem was, when he looked around, there was nothing. Could it be that a space-type boss had entered? An unknown enemy was the most terrifying. Chu Bei did not dare to be careless and hurriedly used his Genesis Heaven power to scan his surroundings. At this moment, he saw that to his left, behind the rock that he had been leaning on, the little black dog was quietly squatting there, its eyes locked onto him. So it's you. You gave me a fright. The corners of Chu Bei's mouth could not help but twitch. That bastard had not left. Naturally, the one who had attacked him earlier wasn't some space elemental expert. It was this little black dog. However, this was no ordinary dog, but a second-rate dog that could breathe fire and turn invisible. Little guy, you dared to sneak attack me, Chu Bei softly muttered as he rubbed his palms together. He pretended to be confused as he walked towards the rock he was leaning on earlier. As he expected, Xiaohei's face lit up with joy when it saw him walking towards the rock. Its sharp claws had already begun waving, as if it would give Chu Bei a vicious attack as long as he leaned on the rock. It would tear open the cloak and pierce Chu Bei's throat. 7 steps, 5 steps, 3 steps. The human was getting closer and closer. Its sharp claws were already raised, flickering with a cold light. Woof! Xiaohei barked excitedly and swiped its claws towards Chu Bei's throat. However, just as its claws were about to touch the human's neck, the human reached out and grabbed it by the neck with a clang. Immediately after, the human lifted it into the air. Xiaohei's eyes were filled with confusion. It did not understand how the human did it. Could it be that the human had Heaven's eye and could see it? Little guy, you're good. I thought you had left. I didn't expect you to be looking for an opportunity to kill me. Chu Bei grabbed Xiaohei's neck with one hand and kneaded Xiaohei's body with the other. Unknowingly, he had already kneaded it into a ball. However, if there was anyone else present, they would definitely think that Chu Bei was crazy because there was nothing in his hands. Xiaohei struggled madly, but it was not very strong. No matter how hard it tried, it could not escape from Chu Bei's demonic claws. If you don't show yourself, I will roast you and eat you. Chu Bei pointed at the barbecue stall at the side and pretended to be fierce. Woof, 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 woof. The panicked barks of the dog filled the entire cave. Xiaohei obviously understood Chu Bei's words. After barking, it revealed its true form and glared at Chu Bei unwillingly. I entered your territory and ate your meat. I am in the wrong. As long as you promise not to attack me again, I will let you go. Also, I haven't finished eating the meat. You can continue eating as if I don't exist. Chu Bei felt that he was very noble. He let go of a person who wanted to kill him. No, a dog. Woof. Xiaohei nodded repeatedly. At the same time, it kept blinking at Chu Bei, as if it was asking how Chu Bei discovered it. Chu Bei stroked the dog's head and smiled without saying anything. That night, Chu Bei slept exceptionally well. In his dreams, he could even smell the fragrance of roasted meat. Other than that, he could also hear the low growls of the dog. Has it already left? A ray of light penetrated the cave. Chu Bei perceived the entire mountain through observation hockey. Xiaohei had disappeared. There was only a pile of broken bones that had been eaten clean by it. After stretching his muscles and bones, Chu Bei continued on the road towards the central area. Chapter 748. That's really far. In the desert, Chu Bei sat cross-legged under a withered old tree, looking at the unreachable light pillar and sighing. Training with the body of a mortal was not an easy task. He did not know how far he had traveled, but he was sure that he was at least a third of the way to the light pillar. Rumble. Chu Bei had just finished resting, but before he could get up, a loud rumble came from afar, and the sand under his feet trembled. Is my luck really that bad? Chu Bei frowned, and his face became more serious. There was definitely something strange about this. It had been a whole day since he left the cave, but he had encountered 7 waves of beast tides in just one day. In the forest, he had been attacked by wolves, by crocodiles on the banks of the river, and in the mountains, he had been bitten by lions. Fortunately, he could still deal with these beast tides and did not suffer any injuries. At first, he thought that he was unlucky, always encountering migrating beast tides, but as the number of times increased, he began to have doubts. Now, he was in the desert, but he could still encounter a group of lizards. It was really strange. This time, Chu Bei did not take the offensive. Instead, he carefully observed his surroundings. Bang, bang, bang. Hundreds of lizards rammed into Chu Bei, but Chu Bei did not move. He realized that these lizards seemed to be angered, and their eyes were red, as if they were looking for something. Under Chu Bei's deliberate search, it did not take long for a familiar fellow to appear in his line of sight. Xiaohei the dog. That Xiaohei the dog was hiding about 10 meters away from him. Most of its body was buried in the sand, and only its small head was exposed, staring at him. So it's you. Chu Bei clenched his fists. It seemed that this Xiaohei the dog was a little bitch who held grudges. Facing Chu Bei's gaze, Xiaohei the dog shrunk its neck, especially when it saw the human's creepy smile, and turned its head without hesitation. You want to run now? Chu Bei sneered and closed the distance of nearly 10 meters in the blink of an eye. Xiaohei didn't even have time to turn invisible before it was caught in his hand. Woof woof, woof woof. Once again falling into Chu Bei's hands, Xiaohei wagged its tail and looked at Xiang Fei pitifully. From time to time, it would bark like a spoiled child. Little fellow, now you know how to act pitiful? You want me to let you go? Chu Bei stroked the dog's head. His eyes narrowed as he clenched his right fist and punched out. Bang! Xiaohei let out a miserable cry. Another punch was thrown out. Xiaohei's pitiful cries continued to fill the air, evoking pity from those who heard it. Bang, bang, bang. Your skin is quite thick. After hundreds of punches, Chu Bei retracted his fists. Looking at his opponent's swaying body, he smiled knowingly. Woof, woof. Xiaohei's whole body was swollen as if it had been stung by a swarm of bees. It endured the pain and weakly barked twice. Its voice was mixed with monstrous anger. Its eyes were fixed on Chu Bei, full of unwillingness. What are you looking at? What? You don't want to admit defeat. Chu Bei raised his fist. Xiaohei snorted and proudly turned its head away. That's it for this time. If you dare to make trouble for me again, I'll kill you. Chu Bei made a throat-slitting gesture and swung his arm to throw Xiaohei into the air. Then, he punched with all his strength. Ow, ow. The little fellow's face was twisted in pain. Its roar was no longer a dog's bark, but a wolf's howl. Looking at Xiaohei, who was gradually disappearing into the distance, Chu Bei nodded with satisfaction. With this lesson and threat, the other party would not dare to provoke him again. Motherf asterisk cur. Where did that dog come from? Who knows? Have we ever offended it? It attacked us sneakily all the time. Since ancient times, haven't dogs been the most loyal companions of human beings? Damn it, why did it rebel against us? The problem is that it can even turn invisible. After attacking us, it ran away. There's no trace of it at all. It's really hateful. It had been half a day since Chu Bei beat Xiaohei. During this time, he saw too many dead humans. Some were badly mutilated by ferocious beasts, some had sword wounds on their bodies, which seemed to be done by their own kind, and some even had intact clothes and no wounds on their bodies, but they were dead. In addition, he also heard a lot of voices about the crusade against Xiaohei. Perhaps Xiaohei hated him to the core, but it did not dare to come to him, so it targeted other humans. Great uncle, you're still alive. Great uncle, did you know? Li Ao is dead. Among the people who were discussing the little black dog earlier, someone noticed Chu Bei and his brows were furrowed in surprise. Bei greeted them with a smile. Some of the people in this group were saved by him from the big wild boar. Bei, congratulations. I'm really happy for you after knowing that you can cultivate again. A young man in white who was about 21 or 22 years old walked up and patted Bei's arm. But I'm very curious. How did you get here? The young man in white was confused. They were not far from the central area now. Too many people had died along the way. It was not easy for them to survive until now. Every one of them had fought with ferocious beasts before, and most of them were injured. Fortunately, there were close to 10 mortal evolution state disciples among them. Only by moving forward together in a group could the risk of death be reduced. However, at this moment, the prodigy whose cultivation level was crippled and cultivated again actually appeared in front of them without any injuries. The young man in white was called Lu Fei. He was also the leader of this group. His cultivation level was at level 7 of Exuvia and was on the heaven ranking like Bei. In terms of cultivation level, Bei was far from being a match for Lu Fei. I ran all the way here. Bei answered casually. Who asked you this? I mean, how did you survive from those mortal evolution state ferocious beasts? Lu Fei asked. Ferocious beasts? I was very safe along the way. I didn't encounter any ferocious beasts. Did you guys encounter them? Bei pretended to be shocked. Although he encountered some ferocious beasts that he couldn't defeat, they couldn't do anything to him because of the blue charm cape. Everyone's mouth twitched at the same time when they heard Bei's answer. It seemed that this young martial uncle didn't encounter any ferocious beasts ever since he came to the illusion realm. This luck was truly heaven-defying. Bei, this illusion realm is actually quite dangerous. Most of us crawled out from the pile of death. You're the only lucky one. You can follow us from now on. Lu Fei patted Bei's shoulder and smiled. Okay. Bei nodded. This Lu Fei's relationship with the original Bei wasn't bad. By the way, there's a mad dog attacking us these 2 days. You need to be careful. It can kill you with one claw, Lu Fei said again. Chapter 749. Thank you for the reminder. Bei clasped his fists. If Xiaohei's dog dared to attack the team with him, he would not mind killing it. Why isn't that mad dog here yet? It's a little strange. It's already dark. Could it be that the mad dog can't find us? If that's the case, that's great. We don't have to worry about being bitten by the dog. The sky was already dark. The most discussed topic among the crowd was why Xiaohei's dog had not attacked them yet. Bei was in the middle of the team with a smile on his face. Actually, Xiaohei's dog had already visited them earlier. However, the other party had noticed his presence immediately. The man and the dog stared at each other for 30 seconds. Xiaohei's dog bared its teeth and left unwillingly. The closer they got to the center of the secret realm, the more desolate it became. At that moment, there were only bare mountain ridges and the spreading yellow soil. The few trees that were left were all dead. Where's the opportunity that was promised? Was it all a lie? This place is too empty. Luckily, we brought enough water. Otherwise, we would have died of thirst in this godforsaken place. Although there are no green plants or streams here, the view is good. We can spot the attacking beasts immediately. Listen, what's that sound? Suddenly, Lu Fei shouted. At the same time, he gestured for everyone to keep quiet. Bei frowned. He had also heard it. It seemed to be a human's voice, but it was mixed with fear. It's Instructor Xia. They seem to be in trouble. Lu Fei was the first to speak as they climbed over a high yellow slope. Bei quickened his pace and soon arrived beside Lu Fei. When he was on the high slope, he finally understood the magic of the secret realm. The central area covered by the red light was like the inner circle of a concentric circle. Between the inner circle and the outer circle was a bottomless ravine. Outside the outer circle, there were layers of mountain walls, like a natural barrier. Within these mountain walls, there were 5 large canyons arranged in a circular pattern. The ends of these canyons converged at one place, which was the outer circle. At this moment, in the canyon closest to them, nearly 100 people were gathered together. Looking at their frightened expressions, it seemed that they had encountered a thorny problem. Senior Brother Lu, are Are those ghosts? One of the people who followed behind him asked tentatively. Maybe. After all, I've never seen it before. Lu Fei took a deep breath and replied with uncertainty. Chu Bei looked down expressionlessly. At this moment, those people wearing the robes of the Purple Cloud sect were dealing with these ghosts. The one leading them was Xia Hanyin. Other than Xia Hanyin, Chu Bei also saw some of his former friends. These people all had their names on the heaven list. They were all at least Exuvia 5th celestial layer. Teacher, save me. I can't control my body. Suddenly, a terrified voice drifted through the air. It was a red-haired young man. His body was out of control, and he was slashing at his companion with a long sword. Teacher, these ghosts can't be destroyed at all. A tall and thin young man defeated a ghost with a punch. In less than 2 seconds, the dissipated ghost gathered together again. Hearing the shouts of the surrounding disciples, Xia Hanyin frowned. Although it was not the first time she entered the secret realm, she had never encountered ghosts before. Even if these ghosts were defeated, they would immediately regenerate. Once they were entangled by the other party, it seemed that they would lose the autonomy of their body and be controlled by the other party. Looking at the disciples killing each other, Xia Hanyin was at a loss. She could only increase the frequency of her attacks in an attempt to attract more ghosts to attack her. Damn it! How can these ghosts be completely destroyed? The battlefield became even more chaotic. More than half of the disciples in the group were already controlled by the ghosts. At this moment, the disciples who were still fighting were no longer facing ghosts, but their companions who were controlled by the ghosts. The situation was extremely passive. Don't be confused. Xia Hanyin glanced at the surrounding people. Her lips moved slightly, and her cold voice once again drifted out from her mouth. You are indeed an expert of the martial contact realm. Chu Bei's gaze shot towards Xia Hanyin, his eyes filled with praise. At this moment, there were at least 30 ghosts surrounding Xia Hanyin, but none of these ghosts could get close to her. A thin layer of spirit armor condensed on the surface of Xia Hanyin's body. This armor, formed by true martial qi, completely isolated her from the ghosts. On the contrary, the ghosts that were cut by Xia Hanyin's true martial qi wind blades were instantly divided into several parts. What gave Xia Hanyin a headache was that although these ghosts could not do anything to her, she could not do anything to them either. It was all because of their strange innate ability to regenerate. Disciples on the slope, leave quickly. Choose another canyon to enter the central area. Xia Hanyin discovered the presence of Lu Fei, Chu Bei, and the rest. Her cold voice carried a majesty that did not allow for refusal. Senior Lu, what do we do now? The group waited for Lu Fei's instructions. Listen to Teacher Xia, choose another canyon. Lu Fei said straightforwardly. If even Xia Hanyin could not solve the problem, they were even more helpless. If they went down to help, they might even send themselves into the abyss. Chu Bei maintained his silence. Very quickly, he noticed the clues on the ghosts. Every ghost had the same invisible energy wave. This energy came from a transparent white ball the size of a fist. In Chu Bei's perception, when these ghosts were defeated, the white ball would produce a transparent thread. This thread would quickly reassemble the disintegrated body. The position of the white ball on every ghost was different. Some were on the chest, some on the head, some on the limbs. Chu Bei, where are you going? I'm going to help. Chu Bei smiled. After waving at Lu Fei to signal him not to worry, he took large strides and ran towards the canyon below. Niece Hanyin, you can't attack like this. Chu Bei shouted at Xia Hanyin as he ran. The sudden voice made Chu Bei the focus of everyone, especially Xia Hanyin. When she heard this familiar and annoying voice, her originally cold eyes were filled with a fire that could devour people. Chu Bei, teacher's death has dealt a big blow to you. I'm happy for you that you can cultivate again, but with your current cultivation, entering the dreamland, there's only a slim chance of survival. At this point, Xia Hanyin lowered her voice and looked at Chu Bei. Also, didn't you hear what I said just now? Didn't I ask you to leave? Why are you still here? Niece Hanyin, we haven't seen each other for 2 years. Don't act like we're strangers. The atmosphere is so weird. After merging with the memories of the original Chu Bei, Chu Bei could not help but tease. In terms of age, Xia Hanyin was 2 years older than Chu Bei. Because he had been under her father's tutelage since he was young, they grew up together and could be considered childhood sweethearts. But ever since she was young, this Xia Hanyin had relied on the fact that her cultivation was slightly higher and would beat up Chu Bei from time to time. She called it the caress of love. In fact, the reason why Chu Bei was beaten up was because of their seniority. Chapter 750. Just when a ghost suddenly appeared behind Chu Bei, Xia Hanyin anxiously called out, "Chu Bei, be careful behind you." "It's fine. To me, cutting them is as easy as cutting tofu." Chu Bei revealed a smile that he thought was very handsome, and without turning his head, he threw a punch behind him, hitting the ghost's right arm. Chi. Different from Xia Hanyin and the rest's attack, Chu Bei's attack seemed to have hit a physical body, bringing out a strange sound. "Don't be careless. These ghosts are indestructible. They will recover." Not long after Xia Hanyin said this, her expression changed, because the ghost that Chu Bei defeated did not recover. How is this possible? How did you do it?" After confirming that the ghost had really dissipated, Xia Hanyin's eyes flashed with a trace of undetectable joy. However, Chu Bei did not answer Xia Hanyin's question, and only saw his figure dancing among the floating ghosts, his left and right fists striking out rhythmically. Wherever he passed, every punch would be accompanied by the dissipation of a ghost. In just a few seconds, the number of ghosts on the scene was reduced by half. What did young martial uncle do? Why can he disperse these ghosts, but we can't? Look carefully at young martial uncle's fist. There's true martial chi. His cultivation is of the mortal evolution state. Teacher Xia is a master of the contact martial state, but she can't do anything to these ghosts. There must be something fishy going on here. Who cares? Young martial uncle is the nemesis of these ghosts. His arrival will save us. The disciples who were not controlled by the ghosts looked at each other. Their expressions were filled with excitement. In just 2 minutes, Chu Bei had dealt with all the floating ghosts, and then set his sights on the ghosts that were attached to the disciples. These ghosts stuck closely to the backs of the people being controlled, and they seemed to know that Chu Bei was their nemesis, so they controlled the hosts to attack Chu Bei. "Niece Hanyin, do you have a way to temporarily restrain these people?" Chu Bei looked straight at Xia Hanyin. As these disciples who were being controlled were too close to the spirits, he was worried that he would accidentally injure these disciples when he shattered the white ball. In order to prevent such a situation from occurring, he had to keep these disciples in a stationary state. "It will consume a lot of energy, but I can do it." Xia Hanyin pursed her lips and nodded after thinking for a while. With that, Xia Hanyin clasped her palms together and chopped horizontally. Vines formed from true martial chi appeared. These vines were very fast, wandering among the crowd. Every time they passed by an uncontrollable disciple, they would wrap around him and firmly bind him. "What are you going to do now?" Xia Hanyin's cheeks were slightly red and beads of sweat had already formed on her forehead. It was obvious that restraining over 30 people at the same time was an extremely strenuous task for her. Chu Bei did not hesitate. After snatching the long sword from a nearby person, he quickly circled behind a long-haired girl who was still struggling under the control of a ghost. After that, under everyone's gaze, Chu Bei raised the longsword high and chopped down close to the long-haired girl's back. To be exact, he chopped down on the spirit that was close to the long-haired girl. In an instant, the spirit dissipated. "She's fine now. You can let her go." Chu Bei looked at Xia Hanyin and pointed at the long-haired girl in front of him. Xia Hanyin hesitated for a moment and then tentatively released the vine. "It's fine. I'm fine." The long-haired girl moved her body. When she realized that she had regained control of her body, she cried tears of joy. "Thank you, junior uncle, for saving me." Unknowingly, all the disciples who were being controlled by the spirits regained their freedom. One by one, they surrounded Chu Bei and thanked him profusely with a grateful look on their faces. Obviously, this group of disciples had already acknowledged Chu Bei from the bottom of their hearts. "Chu Bei, those spirits just now were dealt with by you?" The spirits dissipated and Lu Fei led a group of people down from the high slope. Didn't you see it? Chu Bei shrugged. How did you do it? Xia Hanyin stroked the hair on her forehead and questioned Chu Bei. Chu Bei gestured for her to keep quiet and pretended to be mysterious. I can't say. As his voice fell, under the gloomy gaze of the crowd, Chu Bei continued to go deeper into the canyon. The rest of the journey was smooth. After a quarter of an hour, Xia Hanyin and the others arrived at the outer circle area. There were already many people gathered here. The two people in the lead were the other two mentors who led the team this time. Hanyin, you're a little late. When I found out that one of the leaders was you, I was quite surprised. The youngest mentor in the Purple Cloud sect, a genius girl. Those guys in the sect are not afraid of you dying here. It's fine if old guys like us die, but you're different. You have a bright future ahead of you. Seeing Xia Hanyin's arrival, the other two mentors joked with a smile. Senior brother Chen, senior brother Zhou, don't make fun of me. Since you're here first, why don't you enter the central area? Xia Hanyin pointed to the front, and her calm words carried a trace of respect. As of now, we haven't thought of a way to bring them over. Qin Yu pointed to the bottomless ravine in front of them. He was the first to lead the team here. There's no path at all? Xia Hanyin frowned slightly. Only when one reached the martial general realm could one stay in the void for a short period of time. With their martial spirit cultivation, they were still unable to cross this ravine. There's no path. Chun Yu shook his head. Hanyin, your brain is better than ours. Do you have any good way to cross? Xia Hanyin did not answer and chose to remain silent. Something's coming up. Suddenly, a disciple closest to the ravine exclaimed. Hearing this, everyone looked at the ravine. Countless white clouds appeared in the pitch-black ravine. Mentor, what's this? A disciple looked at Chun Yu. Chun Yu frowned and did not answer the disciple's question immediately. Instead, he flicked the stone in his hand, and the stone landed steadily on the white clouds. That white cloud seems to be able to bear weight. Can we step on it? This way, we can enter the central area. Don't be anxious. We'll listen to the mentor. Amidst the discussion of the disciples, Xia Hanyin, Chun Yu and Zhou Cheng exchanged glances. I'll try. As her voice fell, Xia Hanyin moved and came to the ravine in an instant. Under everyone's gaze, Xia Hanyin took a step forward and stepped onto the white cloud. Then, her 2 feet stood firmly on the white cloud. It can really bear weight. I knew it. After going through so much to come here, how can there be no way to enter the central area? What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go. When the crowd saw that Xia Hanyin was standing safely on the white cloud, they started to discuss among themselves. Then, they ran towards the gully excitedly. In an instant, the scene became chaotic and surging. Everyone, don't be anxious. Before Xia Hanyin could finish her words, there were already close to 100 people who had stepped onto the cloud and ran towards the central area in a frenzy. Suddenly, horrified screams sounded, one after another. Chapter 751. He fell down. How? How did this happen? Isn't it safe? The disciples who were originally rushing towards the gully saw the scene in front of them and were so scared that they immediately stopped their footsteps. The first group of people who stepped on the cloud actually stepped on the air one after another. To be exact, they didn't step on air, but the white cloud under their feet split apart by itself. This sudden change caused them to fall straight down the gully before they could even step on another cloud. Instructor Xia, save me. The disciple stood on the cloud. His legs were trembling and his lips were pale as he begged Xia Hanyin for help. Xia Hanyin pursed her lips and wrapped her legs with a layer of true martial qi. Following that, she headed towards the disciple who was begging for help. Along the way, the cloud under Xia Hanyin's feet also split apart a little, but because her speed was fast enough, before the cloud had completely split apart, the former had already stepped on another cloud. After sending the disciple who was begging for help to the other side, Xia Hanyin started to save the other students. The other 2 instructors were also doing the same. They continuously used their fastest speed to save the disciples who were too scared to move. You guys have also seen it. Although these clouds can be stepped on, there is a certain probability that they will split apart. If you are lucky, you might not encounter a split cloud. However, once a cloud splits apart, according to my estimation, I'm afraid that only those who are Exuvia 5th celestial layer and above will be able to step on the next cloud before it completely splits apart. Speaking until here, Xia Hanyin lowered her voice. Although there are many opportunities in the core region, your life is more important. This gully, whether you can cross or not, is up to you guys to decide. My suggestion to you guys is that those who are not Exuvia 5th celestial layer should stay here and wait for safety. Instructor Xia is right. There are only 3 of us leading the group. We can't send you guys one by one. Just now, someone had already entered the core region. It might be even more dangerous inside. We can't possibly stay here for too long. Chen Yu agreed. After speaking, the 3 instructors stepped on the cloud and flew towards the other side. Follow. Seeing the instructors going over, the disciples whose cultivation were Exuvia 5th celestial layer and above burst out with their fastest speed and rushed towards the other side. Many of the cloud under their feet had already split apart, but because the speed of these disciples was faster than the speed of the cloud splitting, all of them reached the other side safely. Are we going over? The Exuvia 5th layer disciples looked at each other. None of them were in a hurry to step on the cloud. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Opportunity comes from danger. I've already died several times on the way here, so I don't mind dying one more time. Finally, someone couldn't hold back and jumped towards the cloud. Although this person's speed couldn't compare to the 5 Nirvana level experts, he was still considered outstanding among the disciples. He went over. Seeing that their companions had safely reached the other side, some of the disciples became restless. After some hesitation, they clenched their fists and stepped onto the journey of life and death. Chu Bei, your identity is not ordinary. For safety's sake, you should stay here. After Lu Fei greeted Chu Bei, he rushed into the ravine. I'm coming. Save me. The heavens want me dead. Shouts of excitement were mixed with screams of terror. Chu Bei stood in front of the gully and unhurriedly picked a cloud and stepped on it. Under the perception of his observation haki, this so-called danger didn't exist at all. The internal structure of these clouds was actually constantly changing. Between the real and the virtual, it was changing according to the 9-1 rule. After condensing for 9 seconds, it would turn into the virtual for 1 second. If one was lucky, he would step on a condensed cloud. If one was unlucky, he would. Young martial uncle is too calm, right? Even those Exuvia 5th layer and above wouldn't dare to be so carefree like him. Young martial uncle is really not afraid of death. However, his luck seems to be very good. More than half of the time has passed, and the cloud hasn't split open yet. Why do I feel that young martial uncle seems to have seen through the mystery? Everything is planned out between the curtains. The disciples who were waiting at the same place all cast their gaze on Chu Bei. Their eyebrows were filled with surprise. I really can't see through him at all. Xia Hanyin, who had already reached the other side, glanced at the calm Chu Bei, murmured and turned around to leave. Yuehua Island? After Chu Bei got ashore safely, his attention was immediately attracted by a huge stone tablet. The words Yuehua Island were especially eye-catching on the tablet. After arriving at Yuehua Island and entering the red halo, Chu Bei saw disciples in groups of 2s and 3s, looking for their own opportunities. As far as his eyes could see, there was a pond, clear and clear. Wisps of spiritual energy rose, and the fragrance of spiritual herbs floated around the pond. In the center, towering mountains were overflowing with colors. The spiritual trees set off the mountains, and the vines outlined the outline. It was like a fairyland. There's a fire spiritual herb there. There's a Tianyuan flower there. There's a water spiritual vine there. Those who arrived at Yuehua Island with their own strength ran in one after another. Each of them was excited, and their eyes were filled with greed. As for the group of people who arrived before Chu Bei, they were already running here and there, picking spiritual herbs of heaven and earth. In addition to absorbing the genes of life beasts, a human's physique could also be strengthened by spiritual herbs. Different spiritual herbs had different effects, and there were differences in strength. Boom! Just as the disciples were looking for their own opportunities, a golden light appeared in the center of Yuehua Island, and then there was an earth-shattering roar. What's going on over there? Hearing the sound, the disciples stopped what they were doing and looked in the direction where the golden light flashed. Such a big movement. Could it be where the fantasy jade is? One of the disciples was excited, and his eyes were shining. Chubei, you're so lucky to have followed us in. Hearing the voice, Chubei looked back and saw Lu Fei running toward him. Let's go together? Chubei asked. That's what I want. Lu Fei patted Chubei's shoulder. A few minutes later, Chubei, do you think the fantasy jade is in there? Even if it is, can we get it? Lu Fei glanced at Chubei, who was beside him. In front of them, a group of people who arrived first were gathered in front of a gloomy, ancient castle. The castle's door was tightly shut, and it looked very strange. The three mentors, Xia Hanyan, Zhou Cheng, and Chun Yu, were at the front. Boom! Before Chubei could speak, a rumbling sound came from the gloomy, ancient castle. Then, with a creak, the castle's door opened slowly. Looking in from the outside, it was pitch black, and it was very scary. Just then, in the dark, ancient castle, there was a creaking sound, and countless pairs of green eyes lit up in the dark. Although their eyes were small, they were densely packed, and they kept rushing out of the door. Oh no! Xia Hanyin recognized the countless pairs of green eyes, and her expression changed as she screamed. Everyone, scatter and run! Zhou Cheng and Chun Yu shouted at the same time after recognizing the creatures. In the next moment, the three mentors exchanged glances, and armor appeared on their bodies, blocking the dark door, as if to stop the creatures from rushing out. Chapter 752. Although there were three mentors blocking the entrance, there were still some creatures that rushed out from the ancient castle. Are these flesh-devouring worms? Some of the more knowledgeable disciples cried out in shock as fear appeared in their eyes. What are you still standing there for? Do you want to die? Xia Hanyan turned around and glanced at the group of disciples who were still in a daze. The group of disciples reacted. Although most of them didn't know what kind of creatures this black mass was, they knew that it was definitely dangerous. In a short moment, the sand in front of the ancient castle flew up as the group of disciples fled in panic. Chubei, run! Lu Fei pulled Chubei's arm and cried out. Brother Lu, are they so scary? Chubei pointed at the black worms and asked. Flesh-devouring worms. Of course they aren't scary alone. What's scary is that they come in groups. Lu Fei took a deep breath. If you want to live, there are only two ways. One is to run, and the other is to be like those guys and be able to condense the Jinwu cloak. Behind the three mentors, there were 15 disciples fighting with the flesh-devouring worms. Their bodies were covered with a thin layer of Jinwu qi. Although the Jinwu cloak's defensive ability wasn't as strong as Wu Ling's spirit armor, it was enough to deal with the flesh-devouring worms. Jinwu cloak. This was also the signature ability of Exuvia, 9th celestial layer. Brother Lu, don't worry about me. My defensive ability is much stronger than theirs. Chubei pointed at the Yuan Tian cloak on his body. After saying that, not only did he not run away, he even rushed into the group of flesh-devouring worms. F***CK. There's even this equipment. Seeing that Chubei was really fine, Lu Fan cried out in envy and used a martial skill related to movement, turned around and fled. Clang, clang, clang. A series of collision sounds rang out. Hundreds of flesh-devouring worms bombarded the Yuan Tian cloak, their sharp mouthparts tearing at it. However, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't even leave a scratch on the Yuan Tian cloak. How convenient! Chubei's mouth was filled with pride as he threw out punch after punch. The flesh-devouring worm could not hurt him, but he could hurt the flesh-devouring worm. Not long after, Chubei's feet were covered with corpses of flesh-devouring worms. Looking at those 15 Exuvia 9th celestial layer disciples again, their surroundings were filled with corpses of flesh-devouring bugs. The flesh-devouring insects seemed to have realized how powerful they were and gave up on attacking them. Instead, they turned and chased in the direction of the fleeing disciples. "Junior Marshal Uncle, are you selling this cloak?" A disciple walked up to Chu Bei and said. Chu Bei smiled faintly and shook his head. Including him, there were only 16 disciples left. For those who entered the illusion, the higher their cultivation, the higher their chances of obtaining the illusion jade. At least along the way, from the ferocious beasts on the way to the ravine outside the Moonlight Island, and then the countless flesh-devouring bugs from before, after all the selection, only the Exuvia 9th Celestial Layer disciples were left. Rumble. Suddenly, the sound of intense fighting could be heard. Chu Bei and the rest looked towards the direction of the sound. In front of the ancient castle, the three mentors were no longer fighting with the flesh-devouring bugs, but with the black armored knights. These knights were unusually powerful. Every time they brandished the spears in their hands, there would be a flash of black lightning. Xia Hanyan and the other two were obviously serious. Each of them unleashed their speed to the extreme and used all kinds of martial arts techniques. Each of them was entangled with a black armored knight. "Mentor, when will you guys finish fighting?" A disciple seemed to be impatient and asked. "Damn it, why are you rushing me? Why don't you try exchanging blows with it?" Chen Yu glared fiercely at the disciple who spoke. He was already furious. The defense of the black armored knight he was fighting with was too strong. The ferocious beasts he encountered along the way, he could kill them with a casual punch. But against this black armored knight, he could not do anything to it even if he used all his skills. Fortunately, the opponent's attack speed was not fast, so he would not be at a disadvantage. The opportunity belongs to you, but you have to bear the risks yourself. If you have thought it through, you can enter the ancient castle anytime. After Xia Hanyan avoided the attack of the black armored knight, her lips moved slightly and her calm voice floated in the air. "It was not easy to come here. How can we back out?" The group of disciples exchanged glances and made the same decision. One by one, figures flashed into the ancient castle. "Why haven't I seen the armor on your body before?" Just as Chu Bei was about to enter the ancient castle, Xia Hanyan's voice came into his ears. "Niece Hanyan, if you want it, I can give it to you in the future." Chu Bei joked with Xia Hanyan and quickened his pace. Just as he passed through the main door, a strong medicinal fragrance came to his nose. Then, he heard the sounds of fighting. These fighting sounds came from different corners. "Looks like there are a lot of treasures here. Otherwise, they would not have fallen out with each other." Relying on the weak light, Chu Bei paced around and carefully observed everything in the ancient castle. Here, it was not as magnificent as he imagined. Instead, it was gloomy. Black pillars, gray candlesticks, flickering candlelight. The tall gray inner walls were covered with dark green vines. There were so many of them that even the damp ground was covered with green spots. In the gloomy ancient castle, there were 10 rooms of different sizes arranged in an orderly manner. At this moment, most of the rooms were filled with lights and fighting sounds. "Save me!" Suddenly, the fighting stopped in one of the rooms. What followed was a cry for help mixed with misery and pain. That person's cry for help was very loud and repeated over and over again. The fighting sounds in the ancient castle gradually stopped. After a while, people ran out from the other rooms. They followed the cry for help and walked towards the same room with curiosity. Chu Bei also walked out of the room. He walked slowly and carefully. Just as someone arrived at the door of the room, the cry for help suddenly disappeared. The next moment, the sound of water splashing could be heard from that room. When the sound of water sounded, everyone was puzzled. Suddenly, a blood-red pillar of light lit up in the room. When the strange blood-red pillar of light appeared in the room, the group of people closest to the door slowly retreated with vigilance. Walala! Suddenly, a blood-red ball of light flew out from the room and entered everyone's line of sight. When everyone saw what it looked like, they were all stunned. It was a ball of water. However, the color was very frightening. It was actually like blood. In the center of the ball of water, there was a piece of jade that was emitting golden light. Illusory jade. This must be an illusory jade. Everyone's gaze was cast on the jade. Their eyes were filled with greed. Their screams were mixed with excitement. That's not right. I heard Jia Tian shouting for help. Where is he now? One of them seemed to want to hit something. He glanced into the room and his face changed. Yeah, where is he? Could it be that he disappeared into thin air? Everyone frowned. Chapter 753. Walala. Just as the crowd was looking for Jia Tian, they saw the blood-red blob floating in the air, emitting a dazzling light. Then, the blob's figure changed under everyone's gaze. First, it transformed into a ferocious beast and roared angrily. It opened its mouth wide and glanced at the crowd below. Blood-red saliva kept dripping from its white fangs. Before the crowd could react, it transformed into a fluttering butterfly, one above and one below. Then, it split into 7 smaller snakes. They stuck out their forked tongues and hissed at the crowd. Finally, the 7 snakes merged into one and turned into a huge and terrifying ghost face. Looking at the crowd below, the ghost face seemed to be very excited and swayed back and forth. Suddenly, the ghost face stopped swaying, and a strange sound came out of its mouth, and a thin stream of water shot out. The red light was very fast and shot at the young man closest to it. In the next second, the young man who was entangled by the stream of water had a look of fear on his face. Then, his face was full of pain and his body struggled violently. "Save me! Save me!" The young man's cry for help had just sounded. Before the crowd could react, the blood on his face began to fade and his face became pale. Walala! At this time, the ghost face turned into the blood-red blob again. It swayed slightly and swallowed the pale and powerless young man. "It's gone just like that." The crowd's pupils shrank, especially those who were at the front. They subconsciously took a few steps back. Before they knew the details of the blob, they had to be vigilant. Do we still want this illusion, Jade? A woman in the field swallowed her saliva and glanced at the blood-red blob with fear. She wanted to retreat. Opportunities are found in danger. A long-haired young man said with a greedy look and jumped up. Walala! Just as the long-haired young man was about to touch the blob suddenly split into dozens of water snakes and shot at the long-haired young man. Swish! Although the long-haired young man was on guard, his chest was still pierced by a water snake. The wound was bleeding profusely. Looking at the severely injured long-haired young man, no one dared to go forward. The blood-red blob seemed to be more powerful than they had imagined. In front of him, the Zhenwu cloak seemed to be completely useless. "Since my martial nephews are so modest, I shall accept this illusion jade on your behalf." Chu Bei straightened his Yuan Tian cloak and swaggered towards the blood-red ball of water. "Little martial uncle, are you not afraid of death?" "That's right. Didn't you see that Jia Tian and Feng Heng are dead? It wasn't easy to get here. It's best to be vigilant and not act rashly before finding its weakness. Don't provoke this thing. Why don't we wait for the teachers to come in?" While everyone was talking, Chu Bei's right hand had already reached for the blood-red water ball. Crash! Chi! Chi! The blood-red ball of water shook violently, and several water snakes attacked Chu Bei from different directions. However, these water snakes did not penetrate the latter's body. Instead, they created a series of clear clashing sounds. At this moment, the blue light on Chu Bei's cloak suddenly appeared, and an invisible force was entangled with the water snakes. "Little guy, your attack is useless against me." Chu Bei did not care if the water ball could understand him, and said jokingly. His right hand suddenly exerted force. Bang! However, just as Chu Bei's right hand reached into the water ball and grabbed the illusion jade, a huge force surged out of the jade and shook him away. Under the rebound force, Chu Bei's body flew out. Almost at the same time, the black-armored knights fighting the 3 teachers outside the hall stopped fighting, and then their bodies bloomed with a terrifying black light. The next moment, the 3 black-armored knights intertwined and formed a 5-meter-tall giant knight at a strange speed. The sound of something breaking through the air rang out, and the giant rider swept past Xia Hanyan. In an instant, it appeared below the blood-red ball of water. What happened? Xia Hanyin and Zhou Cheng ran into the castle. Whoosh! The sound of water was heard, and under everyone's gaze, the illusion jade in the water ball sank into the giant knight's forehead. Suddenly, the giant knight's eyes shot out a red light. Where did this big guy come from? The disciples looked at each other with confusion in their eyes. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Black fog gushed out of the giant knight's body, as if it had evolved, and a layer of thick armor covered its body. The armor was dark, and the eyes under the steel helmet shot out a red light. The next moment, the knight's body made a friction sound, and at the same time, a violent and terrifying aura swept out. Facing this aura fluctuation that was like a natural disaster, Xia Hanyin, Zhou Cheng, and the rest's faces changed. Roar! A huge roar that seemed to come from ancient times resounded in the castle. The terrifying sound wave reverberated in the air, and the surrounding bricks and stones were shattered. At this moment, the giant knight was like a wild beast that had awakened from a deep sleep. The roar was filled with heart-palpitating cruelty and brutality, as if it was filled with endless destruction and killing. The source of the roar seemed to represent the most terrifying disaster in the world. However, it was such a wild beast that was staring at Xia Hanyin, Zhou Cheng, and the rest. The illusion jade is providing it with energy. As long as we take down the illusion jade, this big guy will disintegrate on its own. Zhou Cheng and Chen Yu looked at each other, and then the true martial qi in their bodies surged. After condensing the spirit armor on the surface of their bodies, the tips of their feet suddenly touched the ground, and their bodies shot towards the giant knight like cannonballs. Bang! Bang! Just as Zhou Cheng and Qin Yu arrived in front of the giant knight raised its pitch-black right palm and slapped down. Its speed was extremely fast, and it did not give the two of them any time to react. Suddenly, the void shook, and 2 clouds of blood mist exploded. Zhou. Instructor Zhou. Impossible. Impossible. The 2 instructors are both martial spirits. How can they not defeat this big guy? Why would such a terrifying existence be in the purple cloud illusion? It's just the weakest illusion. What do we do now? Do we still want the illusion jade? The group of disciples was terrified of the giant knight, and their bodies were trembling. Under the terrifying pressure, their feet seemed to have stiffened, and they could not summon the strength to escape at all. Even the cultivation level of the instructor, martial spirit, was turned into a blood mist by the other party's palm. Their mere mortal evolution state cultivation level was not enough. Thud, thud, thud. The giant knight walked towards the group of disciples unhurriedly. With every step, there would be a low sound of footsteps. This sound bombarded the soul of every disciple. With every step the other party took, they were 1 step closer to death. At this moment, Xia Hanyin's expression also changed. Her eyes were filled with fear, and there was a sense of powerlessness between her brows. The other party was too strong, so strong that she could not even have the thought of resisting. All she could do was wait quietly. Death. Sizzle, however, just as Xia Hanyin and the other disciples were feeling discouraged, the temperature in the air suddenly rose. A flame giant that was about the same size as the giant knight slowly walked in from the entrance of the castle. Chapter 754. Why is there another one? Does the heavens want us dead? No, they're not together. Haha. No matter which one of them survives, our ending will not change. The gazes of the disciples switched back and forth between the flame giant and the giant knight, their faces ashen. Roar! The giant knight suddenly roared and its huge body soared into the air. Due to the excessive force, a half-meter deep and 2-meter wide circular pit appeared under its feet. Under everyone's gaze, the giant knight punched the flame giant with the power to destroy the world. Wherever the fist passed, the void trembled and rippled. Chi-chi. However, it was this terrifying punch that made everyone unable to resist. Before it touched the body of the flame giant, it was melted by the black flames spurted out from the latter's mouth. Immediately after, the flame giant punched. This punch was silent. Boom. However, the moment this calm punch touched the giant knight, an unparalleled energy that could destroy the heavens, and the earth erupted. In an instant, the entire ancient castle was wrapped in black flames, and then the wall tiles turned into nothingness. Xia Hanyin looked at her surroundings in horror. The strange black flame was floating in front of them. Whether it was intentional or not, the black flames that could even burn the void avoided them. In their line of sight, they could vaguely see that the invincible giant knight was collapsing at a visible speed. The black flames gradually dissipated, and a head emerged from the flame giant. It was an old man, his face full of wrinkles and traces of age. The most conspicuous feature was the long scar on the left side of his face. "Thank you for saving my life, Senior." Xia Hanyin glanced at the fantasy jade hovering in front of the flame giant, and her gaze fell on the old man's head. With a respectful expression, she said, "I am Xia Hanyin, a mentor of the Purple Cloud sect. This year's fantasy jade, I will accept it on your behalf." The old man glanced at Xia Hanyin, his voice hoarse. This flame giant was naturally transformed by Chu Bei. When he noticed that the situation was not right, Chu Bei immediately ate the flame fruit. As for the appearance of the old man now, it was because he had used the ability of the face-saving fruit. As for the fact that only his head was exposed, it was completely because the face fruit was of little value. It could only change his appearance. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Bei stretched out his hand towards the illusory jade. Rumble. Just as Chu Bei grasped the illusion jade, the ground began to shake violently, and the world began to collapse. "Is the illusion about to disappear?" Xia Hanyin murmured softly. Strange red threads appeared on her body. The red threads became thicker and thicker until they wrapped around her entire body like a cocoon. Amidst the crisp cracking sounds, Xia Hanyin's body in the cocoon gradually became transparent until it disappeared. At the same time, the bodies of the other disciples also underwent the same changes until they disappeared. The illusion is gone. It seems that the fantasy jade has been obtained by someone else. I wonder who the lucky one is. Last year's illusion jade was obtained by senior brother Chiu. His cultivation directly broke through from Exuvia 9th Celestial Layer to 4-star Martial Spirit. I'm so jealous. At the peak of Violet Cloud Peak, hundreds of disciples gathered together to discuss. They're out. They're out. Above, the black vortex at the entrance of the illusion gradually dissipated, and more disciples poured out from the gap. Senior Martial Brother Liu. What's on that island? Are there opportunities everywhere? I'm still too afraid of death, so I didn't dare to try. Senior Martial Brother Liu, you must have seen the fantasy jade, right? Quickly tell us, who obtained it? Why do I only see Instructor Xia, Instructor Chen, and Instructor Zhou? Looking at his junior martial brothers and sisters who surrounded him with anticipation, Lu Fei scratched his head awkwardly. The center of the ravine is called Moonlight Island. There's an ancient castle on the island, and the fantasy jade should be inside. But my cultivation is not enough, and I was scared away by the flesh-killing bug guarding the ancient castle. As for who obtained the fantasy jade, you guys should ask Instructor Xia. Not far away, Xia Hanyin and the other disciples who were at Exuvia 9th Celestial Layer were already surrounded. What? There's actually such a terrifying existence in the ancient castle. Instructor Zhou and Instructor Chen are dead. If that's the case, this year's Violet Cloud illusion is quite dangerous. Luckily I didn't go in, or else I would have lost my life in there. The fantasy jade was taken by an old man? He can even turn into flames. His cultivation has already surpassed martial spirit, right? Then why wasn't he repelled by the illusion? In the end, so many of our senior martial brothers died in vain? The fantasy jade was actually given to an old man, and we don't even know the identity of this old man. Have any of you seen Chu Bei? Lu Fei's gaze swept across the surroundings. I didn't see him come out. Speaking of junior martial uncle, we really have to thank him. When we just entered, we encountered a mutated wild boar. If it wasn't for him, we would all be dead. I also owe junior martial uncle my life. He was the one who killed those ghosts. What a pity. The genius junior martial uncle just came back and died in the illusion. The disciples who were saved by Chu Bei couldn't help but have their eyes turn red. Woof, woof, woof. Suddenly, the violent barking of a dog resounded, echoing throughout the entire purple cloud sect. Looking up, a huge black shadow appeared where the illusion dissipated. It was a big black dog that covered the sky. As the barking faded, the big black dog gradually became transparent, until it completely disappeared from everyone's sight. Damn, this dog looks so familiar. Damn, could it be the ancestor of that Xiao Hei dog that chased us? Thinking of that dog makes me angry. I was almost killed by it. The disciples who entered the illusion gritted their teeth, their faces full of anger. At the same time, Chu Bei, who was rushing to the courtyard on the mountainside, stopped in his tracks. Looking at the area where the big black dog disappeared, the corners of his mouth twitched nonstop. Others may not recognize it, but he wouldn't be mistaken. This was definitely the Xiao Hei dog that he had trampled on. However, for some reason, this Xiao Hei dog had become so huge. With that size just now, if he met this dog again, it would most likely be him who was trampled by it. After recovering from his shock, Chu Bei didn't think too much about it. After all, he wouldn't have the chance to meet this black dog in the future. As soon as he returned to the courtyard, Chu Bei closed the door. Then, the Genesis Heaven Chi in his body circulated, activating the Fantasy Jade. In a split second, the Fantasy Jade blossomed with resplendent light. At this moment, Chu Bei felt the cells in his body pulsating rhythmically. The true martial chi in the Fantasy Jade was pure without the slightest impurity. It directly integrated into Chu Bei's meridians. Exuvia 4th Celestial Layer. Exuvia 5th Celestial Layer. Exuvia 6th Celestial Layer. Bang! A low explosion sound came from Chu Bei's body. True martial chi gushed out from his meridians, and a layer of light blue armor appeared. Spirit armor, the symbol of a martial spirit. Crack. When the Fantasy Jade shattered, Chu Bei's cultivation had already risen to a 3-star martial spirit. Chapter 755. After resting, Chu Bei entered the Source Heaven space created by the system and continued to absorb the power of Source Heaven. 7 days later, when Chu Bei walked out of the mysterious space, a cacophony of noises sounded in his ears. Chu Bei frowned slightly and opened the door to see what was happening outside. Ghost, ghost. Chu Bei's figure had just appeared at the door when a wave of terrified screams sounded in his ears. A group of monks carrying a coffin walked into his courtyard. There were a total of 16 people in the group. The 4 people walking at the front had horrified expressions on their faces. They were so frightened that they loosened their grip on the coffin and smashed it to the ground. When the others saw Chu Bei's appearance, they were similarly terrified and retreated a few steps. Each one of them hid behind the coffin, their pupils dilated to the extreme. Chu Bei's gaze swept across the courtyard and found that there was a piece of white paper pasted in every corner. On the white paper, there was a large and conspicuous word, funeral. What the hell is this? Chu Bei could not help but mutter. You, don't come over. The monks behind the coffin stared at Chu Bei in horror and had already retreated outside the courtyard. What's going on? Why aren't you going in to deliver the soul? Suddenly, a clear voice like that of an oriole sounded from outside the door. A woman in green walked to the entrance of the courtyard with a displeased look on her face. When the green-clothed woman saw Chu Bei standing at the door of the inner room, her graceful body suddenly trembled, and her face instantly turned gray. Her entire person seemed to have been struck by a bolt from the blue, like a clay doll carved from wood. Evidently, the appearance of this person who should not have appeared caught her off guard. Niece Hanyan, long time no see, I've missed you. Seeing Xia Hanyan, Chu Bei could not help but wave at her. Are you a human or a ghost now? Xia Hanyan sucked in a breath of cold air, her eyes staring fixedly at Chu Bei. Little martial uncle, you're finally back. Without waiting for Chu Bei to speak, a young girl in a purple dress elegantly ran into a unique courtyard. With Mu Shui's appearance, Chu Bei couldn't help but smile from the bottom of his heart. It's only been 7 days, and my Shuai has become even more charming. Even little Uncle Master can't resist you, Chu Bei said with a smile as he looked at Mu Shuer. He couldn't help but run his fingers through her hair. Little martial uncle, what are you talking about? Although Mu Shuer couldn't understand what Chu Bei was talking about, she could tell from his tone that he was definitely teasing her. Immediately, her fair face flushed red, and she secretly glared at Chu Bei. Shuer, he's not dead? Xia Hanyin frowned and walked to Mu Shuer's side. Sister Yin, I promised little martial uncle that I wouldn't tell anyone. Mu Shuer bit her lip and avoided Xia Hanyin's questioning gaze. Hearing Mu Shuer's words, Chu Bei recalled that when the fantasy realm disappeared 7 days ago, everyone thought that he had died inside. He had only told Mu Shuer not to explain to anyone, and let these people think that he was dead. But what was this coffin? The monk blowing the trumpet and the big word memorial in front of him. When everyone thought that he had fallen off the cliff, there was no such thing. Why did you fake your death? Xia Hanyin glared at Chu Bei, her words laced with anger. I don't need you here anymore. Leave. Chu Bei glanced at the monks outside the courtyard. After chasing them away, he looked at Xia Hanyin with a serious expression. In these 7 days, did Li Xian do anything? A country can't be without a ruler. Ever since Master passed away, Xian's sect has been without a new sect leader. And you, the nominal young sect leader, died in the fantasy realm. In these 3 days, the elders have rushed back from outside, preparing to vote for a new sect leader. Currently, the most popular candidate for sect leader is Great Elder Li Xian. This time, too many disciples died in the fantasy realm. Even Li Ao died inside. It was his idea to release the souls of the disciples who died in batches. At this point, Xia Hanyin's tone suddenly changed. What has this got to do with you faking your death? I didn't expect such a big move. Chu Bei murmured. He narrowed his eyes and pondered for a moment before asking, which elders currently support Li Xian to take the position? Currently, there are 3rd elder, 5th elder, 6th elder, 7th elder, 9th elder, and 11th elder. The number of people has already exceeded half. At this point, a trace of surprise flashed across Xia Hanyin's beautiful eyes. She looked suspiciously at Chu Bei. You deliberately died for Li Xian to see? 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 11. Chu Bei repeated, memorizing these numbers in his mind. Then, he looked at Xia Hanyin and said with a smile, Where are they now? I, the nominal young sect leader, am still alive. The Purple Cloud sect does not need a new sect leader for the time being. Purple Cloud Grand Hall. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Xia Hanyin's expression was a little startled. She felt that she did not recognize this martial uncle who grew up with her. Let's go and show our faces. After saying that, Chu Bei flung his sleeves and walked towards the Purple Cloud Grand Hall. At the same time, the Purple Cloud Grand Hall halfway up the mountain was filled with a murderous aura. In the Grand Hall, a red carpet stretched far away. At the end of the red carpet was a luxurious dragon chair made of sandalwood. However, no one was sitting on the dragon chair. On both sides of the red carpet, there were 12 seats arranged in an orderly manner. 10 of them were already occupied. 4th elder, why are you so stubborn? What's wrong with letting the great elder take the sect leader's position? The 3rd elder persuaded a middle-aged man opposite him. So far, no one has seen Chu Bei die in the illusion with their own eyes. Even if he died, it has only been 7 days, and you want to appoint the sect leader. Isn't it a little too hasty? The 4th elder snorted coldly. 4th elder, no matter how much you oppose, in terms of numbers, the supporters have already surpassed the opponents. Even if you oppose, the result will not change. Calling you back is just a formality, the 5th elder chimed in from the side. In my opinion, regarding the appointment of a new sect leader, let's wait for the 2nd elder to come back before making a decision. The 8th elder said. In the Grand Hall, the crowd was divided into 2 factions on whether to support Li Xian, but in terms of numbers, it was obvious that the supporters outnumbered the opponents. Even if Bai Feng comes back, so what if he opposes? The sect leader has been dead for 3 months, and the nominal young sect leader, Chu Bei, also died in the illusion. Other than me, is there any other candidate for the sect leader's position? Li Xian stood up from his seat and glanced coldly at the fourth elder, the eighth elder, and the other opponents. He snorted coldly and said, "Since this matter is set in stone, what's the point of obstructing me? Or perhaps, Bai Feng wants to take the position himself? I'm not dead yet, and you're already discussing the appointment of a new sect leader. Isn't that a little inappropriate?" Suddenly, a mocking voice floated in from outside the grand hall. Then, a figure walked into the grand hall leisurely. Chapter 756. With Chu Bei's arrival, the already somber atmosphere in the main hall instantly reached a new peak. "How? You're not dead." The fifth elder stared at Chu Bei in astonishment, as if he could not believe what he was seeing. Li Xian, the third elder, and the others' faces were also extremely unsightly, especially the former, whose eyes flashed with killing intent. His precious son died in the illusion, but Chu Bei came out alive. "Fifth elder, from what I've heard, do you really want Chu Bei to die in the illusion?" The fourth elder stared at the fifth elder mockingly, then the corners of his mouth curved into a smile. "Chu Bei is still alive. Isn't this a happy occasion worthy of celebration? Why would I want Chu Bei to die?" The fifth elder took a deep breath. He emphasized every syllable he spoke. Smart people could tell that he didn't mean what he said. "If you must appoint a new sect leader, how about I, the young sect leader, take up the position directly?" Under everyone's gaze, Chu Bei straightened his clothes, walked along the red carpet to the end, and then sat down on the dragon throne with a thud. In the main hall, although Chu Bei was the youngest, in terms of seniority, he was the same as these elders. Furthermore, he knew very well how his father had died. Because of that, he did not show the slightest bit of respect to these elders from the very beginning. Looking at Chu Bei sitting on the main seat, Li Xian's brows furrowed, and his expression was even a little ferocious. After trying his best to suppress the anger in his heart, he said, "The first requirement to take up the position of sect leader is to reach the martial general realm. Although you are the young sect leader, your cultivation is only at the 8th level of the qi tempering stage, which is far from enough." Actually, it's not that far off. Chu Bei smiled indifferently, and the true martial qi in his body surged out. 3-star martial spirit. Sensing Chu Bei's aura, the faces of all the elders in the main hall, including Li Xian, suddenly changed. With this kind of cultivation, he was qualified to be a teacher in the sect. Recovering from his shock, Li Xian stared intently at Chu Bei, his eyes filled with confusion and bewilderment. "Impossible. How could you have such a cultivation?" 3 months ago, his cultivation had clearly been crippled by the black bone poison. Even though the other party had encountered some fortuitous encounters in the outside world and was able to cultivate anew, the other party was still unable to do so. However, in less than half a month, how could a cripple cultivate to a 3-star martial spirit? There's nothing to be surprised about. Perhaps this is what it means to fight to survive in the face of death. Perhaps the heavens saw that my cultivation was crippled, so they rewarded me with some heavenly treasures and allowed me to meet a mysterious old man. Chu Bei's lips curled into a smile as he looked at Li Xian, whose expression was extremely ugly and spouted nonsense. Mysterious old man? The group of elders' eyes were filled with curiosity. He was the one who gave me the illusion jade in the dreamland. It was also because I absorbed the illusion jade that my cultivation base advanced by leaps and bounds. Chu Bei said casually, spreading his hands. "What? The mysterious old man you're talking about is the flaming old man in the dreamland." When the elders heard Chu Bei's words, they looked at each other in dismay, their expressions becoming more and more astonished. When the dreamland ended, they found out from the disciples on the heaven ranking that the monster guarding the illusion jade was not something they could fight against. Fortunately, at the critical moment, a flaming old man appeared out of thin air and saved them. However, the illusion jade was also taken away by him. But who would have thought that the flaming old man would actually give the illusion jade to Chu Bei? It's really the sect master's spirit from heaven. The young sect master is only 20 years old, but his cultivation has already reached 3-star martial spirit. The eighth elder suddenly laughed. No matter what kind of opportunity you have, you are still not a martial general. You still can't be the sect master. Li Xian said with a cold face. I'm not in a hurry. I'll leave this position empty for a period of time. When I become a martial general, I'll take this position. Chu Bei patted his butt and stood up from the chair. In fact, if he wanted to, he could open the system reward right now and directly raise his cultivation to 2 stars. However, in the current situation, there was no need for him to be so high profile. It was always good to have a trump card. Anyway, he had already achieved his goal. First, he knew which elders should be killed. Second, he had successfully stopped Li Xian from taking the position. Great Elder, since I'm not dead and my cultivation has been restored, you wouldn't still be coveting the sect master's position, right? Chu Bei teased Li Xian, his words filled with sarcasm. Let's go. Li Xian snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves, and walked out of the hall angrily. Third Elder, Fifth Elder, and the rest followed closely behind. Instead, it was Fourth Elder, Eighth Elder, and the rest who stood against Li Xian, who surrounded Chu Bei in the middle, asking Chu Bei about his recent experiences. Chu Bei could only continue to talk nonsense. After the elders left, Xia Hanyin and Mu Shuer, who had been eavesdropping outside the hall, walked in. Little Chu, you've really made me look at you in a new light. Although you were a little shrewd in the past, at least on the surface, you were very respectful to the Great Elder and the rest. But now, you've angered the Great Elder and the rest. Xia Hanyin looked at Chu Bei in surprise and couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. Chu Bei smiled and did not reply. If he used the power of Source Heaven, he could destroy this group of people in an instant. After returning to the courtyard, Chu Bei sat cross-legged. His body was suffused with a layer of hazy purple light. Under the bath of the purple light, Chu Bei only felt streams of warm flow throughout his body, and it was extremely comfortable. As the true martial qi in his meridians became more and more abundant, Chu Bei's face gradually became flushed and his mouth began to gasp for breath. 4-star martial spirit, 5-star martial spirit, 6-star martial spirit, 9 stars martial spirit, 1-star general. This rising aura gradually stabilized until it reached the 2 stars general level. Gradually, Chu Bei opened his eyes and saw that his feet were wrapped in a layer of gray cyclone. With one step, he actually went from the westernmost side of the house to the easternmost side, a distance of more than 5 meters. In this plane, the quenching qi realm refines the body, the mortal evolution realm initiates the release of true martial qi. The contacting martial realm, in this major realm, martial spirits can already condense spirit armor. The general can condense a cyclone in his body and can fly for short distances. The martial king can truly fly. After a while, Chu Bei's right hand danced and evolved a beautiful dress with the power of Source Heaven. When the dress touched his hand, a trace of icy cold touch went straight into his palm. The entire dress was sky blue. It had an extraordinary texture and was as thin as a cicada's wing. Although it did not have any fancy patterns, it revealed exquisite nobility everywhere. It could be said to be fresh and natural, completely natural. The most important thing was that the surface of the dress released a faint light. It was faintly discernible and very bewitching. Chu Bei nodded in satisfaction, then took the dress and ran towards Mu Shuer's courtyard. Although Xia Hanyin and Chu Bei grew up together, this Chu Bei was once the Chu Bei. To the current him, Xia Hanyin's weight in his heart was far less than Mu Shuer's. Chapter 757. Young Martial Uncle. This is such a beautiful dress. Mu Shuer's eyes lit up when she saw the blue dress in Chu Bei's hands. Her mouth opened slightly, revealing a variety of expressions: surprise, joy, and excitement. As a girl, Mu Shuer couldn't help but reach out to touch the dreamy sky blue dress in Chu Bei's hands. The extraordinary texture, the cool touch, the natural embroidery, and the most stunning thing was the faint blue glow. It was extremely dreamy. The Genesis sky dress, a surprise for you. Chu Bei handed the dress to Mu Shuer and stood with his hands behind his back with a smile on his face. No woman could resist the temptation of beauty. Young martial uncle, is this really for me? Mu Shui swallowed her saliva. Her tongue seemed to have frozen as she stammered out a complete sentence. What else could it be? Chu Bei shrugged. Mu Shui smiled when she received another affirmation. Her dimples appeared exceptionally sweet. Thank you, young martial uncle. Mu Shui's heart felt as if it was filled with honey. She smiled, and even her cheeks were faintly flushed. Come back to your senses. Go change your clothes in the room and show them to me. Chu Bei raised his eyebrows at Mu Shui and pointed to the room behind them. Okay. Mu Shui nodded her head. Then, under Chu Bei's watchful gaze, she quickly returned to her room. Tap, tap, tap. About an hour later, cheerful footsteps could be heard from the room. Young martial uncle, does it look good? Mu Shui pouted when she arrived in front of Chu Bei. Is such a beautiful dress wasted on me? Chu Bei was stunned when he saw Mu Shui in the Genesis sky dress. He was stunned for a while before he shook his head repeatedly. Beautiful like an orchid, stunning the mortal world. Hearing Chu Bei's evaluation, Mu Shui's face turned red. She glanced at Chu Bei reproachfully and said, Young martial uncle, don't tease me in the future. Chu Bei scratched his head awkwardly. He knew that he had lost his composure. Now, he finally understood Qian Nan a little. Perhaps when Qian Nan first met Yusin, he was just like him. Shui, stand here and don't move. Martial uncle will show you the true power of this star gauze skirt. Chu Bei gestured for Mu Shui to stand still. Mu Shui answered softly. 1 minute later. Little martial uncle, don't hit my face. It'll be bad if it suddenly stops working. Mu Shui gritted her teeth as her gaze locked onto the stone in Chu Bei's hand. Her slender hands gripped her skirt nervously. Don't worry, I won't disfigure you. After comforting Mu Shui, Chu Bei threw the stone in his hand. Swoosh. With a whoosh, Chu Bei accurately threw the stone in Mu Shui's direction. Clang. However, just as Mu Shui closed her eyes in fear, the Genesis sky dress released a sky-blue glow. The sky-blue glow was like a solid wall as it steadily sent the stone flying. That scared me to death. Fortunately, it didn't stop working. Mu Shui glanced at the stone that landed nearby and patted her chest. Her gaze then landed on Chu Bei's body. Her beautiful brows knitted together as her beautiful phoenix eyes widened unsurprisingly. Little martial uncle, I told you not to hit my face, so you changed it to there? Chu Bei avoided Mu Shui's murderous gaze as he scratched his head. He quickly glanced at her full chest and smiled awkwardly. There's wind, so I didn't control it well. He really had only thrown it casually because he knew that the system's products would definitely be of high quality. Who would have thought that he would aim at her full chest? I'm going to ignore martial uncle. Mu Shui snorted and turned to return to her room. She closed the door and left Chu Bei swaying in the wind. Through the window, Chu Bei faintly watched Mu Shui change her face faster than flipping through a book. He shook his head. Women. Host has received an illusion seed. The system's voice rang in Chu Bei's mind. Living illusions would appear once every year. Those forces that possessed illusionary realms would go in to search for opportunities and the existence of illusory jades while the illusionary realms were open. But there were also illusions that had not been discovered. Perhaps due to the passage of time or other special reasons, when they stopped producing illusion jades, they were called dead illusions. They also had another name, which was ruins. Once an illusion died, it would stay in one place forever. Even if all the opportunities within were emptied, it would not disappear. Every time an illusion died, it would cause a commotion. This was because it would give birth to a seed. It was said that if one obtained this seed, as long as they used the right method, it was possible to give birth to a new illusion. Where should I go to find a ruin, especially one with a seed? Chu Bei murmured and turned to the sect's contribution hall. The contribution hall was a place where the Purple Cloud sect issued missions. At the same time, it was also the place where the most information was collected. Disciples of the sect could accept missions issued here. After completing them, they would receive a certain amount of contribution points. These contribution points could be used to exchange for martial arts techniques, elixirs, and other items in the treasure pavilion. Arriving at the contribution hall, Chu Bei looked around and was attracted by a mission. Perhaps the heavens were looking after Chu Bei. This mission was related to ruins. However, when he saw the name of the person who issued the mission, Chu Bei frowned. Liu Bei, the ninth elder of the Purple Cloud sect. He was a 5-star general who supported Li Xian's ascension. This dead illusion was located in Lingyun City. It was discovered by a local woodcutter in Sunset Valley 4 days ago. With Lingyun City as the center, there were 5 major forces within a 100-mile radius. 4 sects and 1 region. Chu Bei's Purple Cloud sect was one of the 4 sections. Perhaps for the sake of harmony, the 5 major forces immediately sealed off the news and sent people to guard the ruins. They agreed to enter the ruins 5 days later, which was tomorrow. As for who the illusion seed belonged to, it would all depend on one's strength. Although the ruins were dead illusions, there were also restrictions. This time, the ruins only allowed those with a cultivation level of 5-star general and below to pass through. However, anyone with a cultivation higher than 5-star martial general would be injured by a strange force the moment they touched the restriction outside the ruins. After reading the mission information, Chu Bei signed up without hesitation. The reason why the sect issued a mission for disciples to participate in the search for illusion seeds was undoubtedly to find cannon fodder. However, Chu Bei did not think that he would become cannon fodder. With Source Heaven's power in hand, Chu Bei could already see the illusion seed waving at him. Chapter 758. Why did my son die in the illusion, but Chu Bei, who should have died, is still alive? Aoer's death must have something to do with this kid. In a luxurious room, Li Xian slammed his palm on the table, causing it to shatter into pieces. His roar was filled with hatred. What's even more unexpected is that this kid actually obtained such a great opportunity. If he is allowed to continue like this, I'm afraid he might really break through and become a general. Third Elder picked up the tea on the table and took a sip. If that really happens, I'm afraid the position of Sect Master will have to be given to him. The position of Sect Master is something I must obtain. Third Elder, help me think of a good way to get rid of him without anyone knowing. Li Xian looked at Third Elder. Right now, it is a sensitive period. Fourth Elder, Eighth Elder, and the others must be watching Chu Bei's every move to ensure his safety. If I want to get rid of that kid without alerting them, I'll have to think about it. After saying that, the Third Elder fell into deep thought. Tap, tap, tap. At this moment, a figure knocked on the door and walked in. Ninth Elder, what made you so happy? Li Xian looked at Liu Bei with displeasure. He was not happy at all. Big brother, I'm here to tell you a piece of good news. Liu Bei pulled a chair over and sat down. He smiled and said, You know about the Sunset Valley ruins, right? Chu Bei just signed up. What? Li Xian and Third Elder stood up at the same time. At first, they were shocked, then they looked at each other. It was not difficult to see the joy in each other's eyes. There's a path to heaven, but he doesn't want to take it. There's no door to hell. Li Xian clenched his fists. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. His gaze fell on Liu Bei. Ninth Elder, you should know what to do, right? This time, there is no room for error. He must die. Hee. Big brother, don't worry. I promise to do it cleanly. Liu Bei patted his chest, his brows brimming with confidence. In a day's time, the news of Chu Bei's survival was like a tap water effect, quickly being known by everyone in the sect. The next day, at the first glimmer of dawn, Chu Bei got up. When Chu Bei arrived at Liu Bei's designated meeting place, he actually saw 2 familiar figures. His childhood sweetheart, Xia Hanyan, and his good relationship with Liu Fei, who was also on the heaven roll. Chu Bei, where have you been hiding these past few days? After we separated in the illusion, I thought you had died in there. What a waste of the paper money I burned. Liu Fei could not help but give Chu Bei a punch. It's said that you even know that flame old man. He even gave you an illusion jade, allowing your cultivation to soar to the 3-star martial spirit realm. What's the saying again? Bad people don't live long. but good people live for 1,000 years. No matter what, I won't die before you. Chu Bei laughed at Lu Fei. Chu Bei, isn't it good for you to stay in the sect when you have nothing to do? Xia Hanyan looked at Chu Bei unhappily. Niece Hanyan, why can you go but I can't? My cultivation is no weaker than yours. Chu Bei shrugged his shoulders at Xia Hanyan, causing her to tremble in anger. Since everyone is here, let's set off. As the leader, Liu Bei glanced at Chu Bei and said after clearing his throat. There were more than 20 people in the group, and more than half of them were on the heaven roll. Lingtian City, 10 kilometers north of the city, Sunset Valley. Outside the valley, there was a dense crowd and it was noisy. Looking around, there were hundreds to thousands of people gathered in groups of 2s and 3s as they discussed intensely. From their clothes, it was obvious that they were ordinary citizens of Lingyun City. Perhaps they had received some news and came here to join in the fun. Everyone, look, someone is here. Someone in the crowd shouted. Then, many people looked to the east in unison. They saw that this group of people were wearing the same robes, and the image of a sword behind them was especially eye-catching. They are from the Divine Sword sect. Some people in the crowd with sharp eyes exclaimed. Look, the Lee Fire sect is here too. Another group of people arrived. They were all wearing fiery red robes, and on the chest of their robes, there was an image of a burning flame. As expected of the Luo Water sect, there is not a single man. Another group of people came from the west. The members were all women, and the leader was a middle-aged woman. I never expected them to be so punctual. Lu Fei patted Chu Bei on the shoulder, and at the same time, pointed at the other 3 sects and could not help but say, every sect places great importance on matters like ruins, so there will not be any absences. If there are any absences, it will be a good thing for us. After all, we will have one less competitor. Xia Hanyan glanced at Lu Fei and said, Liu Bei, I never expected that the person leading the Purple Cloud sect would be you. The middle-aged woman leading the Luo Water sect coldly looked at Liu Bei, and then her gaze landed on Chu Bei, probing, You are Chu Bei? Annie Hong, it's only been 5 years, and you can't recognize me? Relying on his memory, Chu Bei greeted the middle-aged woman. As the Luo Water sect and the Purple Cloud sect were relatively close to each other, the interactions between the 2 sects were relatively close. The middle-aged woman's name was Xie Hong. She was the same as Liu Bei, a 5-star martial general. The Divine Sword sect's leader was Quan Guang, while the Li Fire sect's leader was Zhu Yi, who was also a 5-star martial general. Now, all that's left is the people from the sacred region. I wonder how many people they will send this time. Liu Fei whispered into Chu Bei's ear. Unlike the 4 major sects, the sacred region was one of the 5 major factions, but it was especially mysterious. On the surface, it was known that its heritage was not weaker than the 4 major sects, but it was unknown how strong it was. Phew! At this moment, a beam of light flashed across the distance, and half a second later, a figure appeared above Chu Bei and company. It was a youth who looked to be in his 20s. He had long eyebrows that resembled willows, a jade-like body, and bronze skin. His facial features were distinct and deep, and his black hair was draped over his ears. The most eye-catching thing was the sword beneath his feet. Streams of light swirled around it, releasing a terrifying killing intent. Sacred artifact. The sacred region sure is generous. Xia Hanyan's gaze landed on the sword beneath the youth's feet, and a look of surprise flashed in her eyes. A sword that could allow one to fly in the air was definitely a sacred artifact with a spirit. Seniors, I had some matters to attend to on the way here, so I came late. I hope you don't blame me. I'm Han Yang, the current sacred son of the sacred region. The youth smiled slightly, and at the same time, emitted a powerful aura. Sensing the aura emitted by Han Yang, Quan Guang, and company's expressions changed slightly. They were aghast. The sacred son is still young, but his cultivation level has reached the level of a 5-star martial general. You make us old fellows feel ashamed. Seniors, you praise me too much. Han Yang maintained his smile, looking genial. Chapter 759. Only the sacred region saint came? Liu Bei took a step forward and asked. The elders in the sacred region said that I am invincible below the martial king level. This time, I alone am enough. Han Yang cupped his fists towards Liu Bei, his words filled with confidence. Invincible below the martial king level. Your elders have high expectations of you. Liu Bei said with some displeasure. Ever since Han Yang arrived, he had become the focus of attention. Other than being the mysterious sacred region's current saint, he also had the cultivation of a 5-star martial general. Chu Bei, this evildoer's age is about the same as ours, but why is his cultivation level so much higher than ours? He is comparable to the 9th elder. Even in another 10 years, we will not be able to reach his current level. Liu Fei placed a hand on Chu Bei's shoulder as he looked at Han Yang with admiration. He is indeed very outstanding among his peers. Xia Hanyin was not stingy with her praise, her eyes filled with approval. Chu Bei glanced in Han Yang's direction as the corners of his mouth twitched. He did not think much of it. He was just a posturing fool. What caught Chu Bei's attention was the black bag on Han Yang's back. Faintly, he had a feeling that the item in Han Yang's bag was not simple. Since the 5 of us are here, let's go in. The ownership of the seed will depend on our own abilities. Li Fire Sex, Zhui said. As the illusion had not been dead for long, the Sunset Valley was currently shrouded in fog. The dense and resplendent 5-colored curtain of light connected together, like an inescapable net made of 5-colored threads, enveloping the Sunset Valley. Follow me in. As he said this, Liu Bei glanced at Chu Bei. His eyes darted around, as if he was planning something. Sensing the killing intent that flashed in Liu Bei's eyes, Chu Bei smiled without any change in his expression. With Li Ao's attack in the purple cloud illusion, he had already guessed that Liu Bei would take action in the ruins when he saw that the leader of the mission was Liu Bei. However, he did not care. Putting aside the fact that he had Genesis Heaven power, it was hard to say who would be the one to kill whom based on his own strength. Chu Bei, Xia Hanyin, and the rest followed closely behind Liu Bei. Both of their palms were placed on the 5-colored light screen. There was a ripple, and they disappeared. Passing through the light screen, Chu Bei could only feel a dense heaven and earth spiritual qi rushing towards him. The density of this spiritual qi was far above that of the purple cloud illusory realm. This was a strange world that was enshrouded in light and mist. It was hazy, mysterious, and profound. Is this what happens after an illusion dies? Chu Bei murmured. The surrounding mist was hazy, as if the chaos was surging, and everything looked blurry. Looking around, there were only people from the purple cloud sect around. The Divine Sword sect, Li Fire sect, and other factions were nowhere to be seen, as though they had been dispersed. Liu Fei looked at Liu Bei. 9th Elder, can you determine the location of the seed? Liu Bei shook his head. Let's go deeper first. After traveling for a while, the hazy white mist gradually dissipated as his vision gradually improved. Chu Bei once again sized up the ruins in front of him. It was like an abandoned world. All he saw was desolation, and it looked extremely bleak and distant. Looking ahead, he saw large swathes of ruins. What might have once been a resplendent hall was now a dilapidated wall. The ruins were huge and empty, with rubble everywhere. Is this caused by the passage of time, or was it caused by a terrifying battle? Seeing the once majestic palaces and halls reduced to rubble, Chu Bei could not help but frown. What level of illusion was this ruin when it was alive? Kacha. Coming to the ruins, there was a crisp sound beneath his feet. It was a stone plaque. It was unknown what kind of stone it was carved from. Even though the palaces and halls had been reduced to ruins, it was still shrouded in mist, without any signs of damage. Driven by curiosity, Chu Bei picked up the stone plaque, and a cool feeling entered his palm. There were 3 large words engraved on it, and each word was emitting a faint light, faintly discernible. These 3 large words were written with strong strokes, with a vigorous aura, like a swimming dragon, vivid and lifelike. Lord Dog Hall. Chu Bei blurted out. The name of this hall was so fresh and refined that it was unforgettable. When he looked at the back of the stone plaque, his body froze, and his eyebrows could not help but twitch. There was a picture engraved on the back of the stone plaque. A group of strangely dressed people were kneeling in front of a high platform. On the high platform, a Xiao Hei dog was like a god, enjoying the worship of the people. That's right, the god dog in the picture was the Xiao Hei dog that was roasting meat in the purple cloud illusion. Woof! Just as Chu Bei was in a daze, the Xiao Hei dog in the picture seemed to have come alive, and it actually opened its mouth and barked. When Chu Bei looked at the stone plaque again, he saw the Xiao Hei dog in the picture baring its teeth at him, revealing a human-like smile, but the smile was filled with ridicule and ridicule. Before Chu Bei could react, the stone plaque shattered with a crack, turning into specks of light and dissipating. Damn it! Looking at the stone plaque that disappeared in his hand, and recalling the Xiao Hei dog's annoying smile, Chu Bei could not help but curse. Chu Bei, why did you hear a dog barking here? Xia Hanyan walked to Chu Bei and asked. You must have heard wrongly. Why would there be a dog here? Chu Bei laughed. Heard wrongly? Xia Hanyan frowned and looked suspiciously at Chu Bei. She had a feeling that Chu Bei was hiding something from her. Ninth Elder, Chu Bei, quickly look at those. What are those? At this moment, Lu Fei shouted. Chu Bei's gaze turned towards the direction that Lu Fei was pointing at, only to see that the ground was filled with huge and terrifying pits, and each pit was tens of feet long. Under Lu Bei's lead, the group ascended to a higher place, and the outline of the huge pits became clearer. Ninth Elder, are these footprints? Lu Fei looked at Lu Bei with some fear. Lu Bei kept silent, his eyes filled with astonishment, and his shock was no less than that of the disciples. Stop looking, let's continue on our way. Lu Bei swept a glance at the ruins behind him and led the group deeper into the ruins. Ninth Elder, why did you stop? Looking at Lu Bei, who had suddenly stopped, Lu Fei asked puzzledly. Somehow, I feel that there might be an opportunity in this area. Lu Bei glanced at Chu Bei and said to Lu Fei, there are only 2 broken temples here. What opportunity could there be? Ninth Elder, your intuition is definitely wrong. Lu Fei retorted. If I say there is, then there is. Lu Bei snorted, and then his gaze swept across the group of disciples. Chu Bei, Lu Fei, Xia Hanyan, Li Chao, Lu Hu, the 5 of you follow me into this temple. The rest of you, search for the temple opposite. Yes, Ninth Elder. The disciples who were not named by Lu Bei responded, and walked towards the temple opposite at the same time. All of you follow me. Lu Bei glanced at Chu Bei, Lu Fei, and the rest. Chu Bei looked at Lu Bei with a playful expression, and a teasing smile hung on his lips. Just as he was about to follow, Xia Hanyan reached out and stopped him. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.